Chapter 328. Han Fei had a dream. He dreamed that he was being hunted and had nowhere to run. His body was broken and his head was shot through by an arrow. Who? Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes, sweating. It turned out that he was just dreaming. Only then did he let out a long breath. Han Fei tried to move, but his whole body seemed to be torn apart. The severe pain hit Han Fei's cranial nerves strongly. His right hand, in particular, felt like it was being pressed down by a mountain. He couldn't even lift it. Hiss! He gritted his teeth and cast the divine healing technique on himself. The radiance sprinkled down, and a warm current flowed through his body. Only then did he relax a little. In this way, Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself every once in a while. Just like that, it took an entire day for his body to recover by more than half. Obviously feeling much better, Han Fei dragged his tired body and slowly climbed out of the spiritual spring. At this time, Han Fei looked at the spiritual spring again, only to find that the water level had dropped a lot. He couldn't help but smile bitterly, going for wool and coming home shorn. 5 or 6 of his spirit artifacts had exploded, and his long saber had also been broken. His strength had also been severely damaged, and he had less than 60% of his peak strength. This trip to the dragon boat could be said to be a huge loss. However, Han Fei didn't feel too regretful. When he saw Lin Miao Miao lying quietly not far away, a burst of guilt surged in his heart. Oh, so it's San. The level 3 fishery was really dangerous. The dragon boat belonged to someone else, and it wasn't under his control at all. For the sake of profit, the threat from mankind itself is no less than that from the ocean. 7 days later, Han Fei was in a daze, cultivating 10 spirit-absorbing war bodies. At this moment, his face was flushed red, and his solid muscles were glowing. Who? Han Fei looked at the data. Owner, Han Fei, level greater than 33. Junior Dangling Fisher, spiritual energy, 420-2561, 4,199. Spiritual heritage, LV, high-grade spiritual beast. Twin yin-yang spirit, swallowing fish, level 25, weapon. Blue sea wandering dragon, daggers majoring in gong, P, water vein technique. Volume 3 of void fishing, spirit level, divine quality. The upper limit of spiritual energy can't be increased anymore. It's time to go out. In the past few days, Han Fei had eaten all the spiritual fruits and only absorbed 4. 2 million points of spiritual energy. Together with the spiritual spring that was almost dried up, the total amount of spiritual energy was probably no more than 6 million. Han Fei heaved a sigh. If nothing had happened on the dragon boat, his spiritual energy storage would have reached tens of millions. However, Han Fei didn't feel it was a pity. The dragon boat made him realize that if you were just an ordinary person, you would enjoy absolute safety on the dragon boat. But if you reveal your extremely valuable side, then there is danger. If he had chosen to compromise on the dragon boat, the current situation might have been even worse. If he compromised, this training would be over. Want to leave again? It would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. With a thought, he appeared in the mud pit at the bottom of the sea again. At this moment, the bottom of the sea had already calmed down. Han Fei was buried several meters deep in the mud. A moment later, a faintly discernible figure quietly poked at the soil and carefully looked around. When he saw a black-mooned sickle fish suddenly retreating in fear, and a school of fish swam by, he was relieved to find that there seemed to be no threat. After all, he had been in Forge the Universe for a long time. The other party wouldn't stay here all the time, and the dragon boat wouldn't stay here for him. Han Fei had been worried that if the people of the Sun family foolishly stayed in this area after he disappeared, he would really be in danger. However, from the looks of it, the other party seemed to think that he had escaped. What Han Fei didn't know was that when they collided, the recoil force of the mysterious rod shocked the other party. That Sun family member was scared away by him. After this life and death experience, Han Fei became even more careful. The effect of the hidden fog grass he used was too poor. Compared to real stealth, this was of little value and couldn't escape the eyes of peak-level dangling fishers at all. However, how many peak-level dangling fishers could there be? In Sannan, the level 3 fishery, junior dangling fishers still accounted for the majority. Therefore, Han Fei continued to use the mist shadow grass. After all, he was not a hunter. It was not bad to have an ordinary semi-stealth ability. Han Fei summoned the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and one person, and one shrimp moved forward on the bottom of the sea. Destination, the sea-born grassland. On the dragon boat, people went up and down every day. So in the following period of time, Han Fei met a lot of people. But every time someone appeared, he would ask the 9-tailed mantis shrimp to dig a hole and then drill into the mud. He was so careful not for anything else but to avoid these people's eyes and ears. If there was no accident, the person of the Sun family should not be dead. As long as the other party was not dead, it was possible to call more people over. Therefore, along the way, every treasure hunter had to be on guard. Even if these treasure hunters had nothing to do with the Sun family, what if the Sun family caught these treasure hunters and asked them? Wouldn't he be exposed? Perhaps he might even fall into a situation where he was surrounded and killed. Of course, san how vast the level 3 fishery was. Along the way, although Han Fei occasionally met people, most of the time there were only fish. Therefore, Han Fei hurried on his way and looked for spiritual fruits as usual. In just 10 days, except for breathing, Han Fei was sneaking on the bottom of the sea. In the past few days, he got a lot of spiritual fruits and encountered danger. Don't look at San. The level 3 fishery was very large, but in a place like the ocean, every 1,000 kilometers there might be great changes. He encountered deep-sea ravines with cliffs, passed through areas of spiritual plants with seaweed everywhere, passed by seemingly mysterious undersea caves, and found wonderful places with thousands of kilometers of coral. Along the way, a large number of creatures appeared, so many that Han Fei didn't even bother to remember them. Han Fei even encountered marching sea leeches once. At that time, he directly rushed out of the water and floated in the air. On the 22nd day, Han Fei estimated that he was less than 20,000 kilometers away from the sea-born grassland, because from the area where he was at this moment, there were more and more spiritual plants in the sea. This was a very important reference index. At this time, Han Fei was standing on the edge of an undersea cliff. This place looked very beautiful. Behind Han Fei was a dark green carnivorous vine, pole hundreds of meters high, which was actually a bit similar to the seaweed vines in the deep-sea jungle of the level 2 fishery. Around the carnivorous vine pole, there were arched rock caves, large areas of transparent sea squirts, and seaweed swaying with the waves. Han Fei also saw colorful sea urchins scattered in the seaweed. However, these were not the key points. Han Fei had explored many places along the way, but unfortunately, many places that looked like dangerous places were not really dangerous places. Referring to Old Bai's sea map, he speculated his location according to the landform and found that there were as many as a dozen dangerous places near him. However, no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find any. At this moment, although this cliff crack was not recorded on the sea map, Han Fei still decided to give it a try. Before doing this, Han Fei had to do one more thing. He fished out Lin Miao Miao's body from the world of monster refinement and asked 9 Tails to dig a pit. After a while, Han Fei buried Lin Miao Miao and said, "The scenery here is good. Let's rest here. In the future, if I have a chance, I will go to your hometown to have a look. Goodbye." After saying that, Han Fei jumped up and began to let his body fall into the dark crack. 100 meters, 500 meters, 00 meters. This time, Han Fei fell a full 00 meters before he reached the bottom. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little shocked. Including the 700 or 800 meters above the cliff from the sea, It must be 1,500 meters deep, right? Han Fei knew that a depth of 1,500 meters was probably nothing in this world. After all, in the words of old Bai, in the unknown place, any dangerous place was millions of miles long. It seemed logical that the planet was so big and the water was so deep. However, Han Fei was a little uncomfortable. After all, there was strong water pressure on the seabed. 1,000 meters deep and 1,500 meters deep were two different concepts. At least, Han Fei's current speed and reaction ability were suppressed by more than 10%. Before Han Fei could think more, he tilted his head and saw a light spot approaching not far away. There was more than one light spot, and it seemed to be a group of light spots. In addition to those light spots, Han Fei also saw glowing shrimps breaking out of the soil on the surface of the soil. It seems that I'm really in the deep water. Han Fei naturally understood that in the dark bottom of the sea, there would always be some strange creatures. Their bodies could generate electricity and even light up. Obviously, he had encountered one. After a while, he saw the group of big guys swimming over. Name: lanternfish. Introduction: a deep-sea fish with a solid body and flashing tentacles on its head. When it attacks, it will release the lights on its head and tail. It's good at electric shock and spiritual attacks. The flashing lights on its head can be used as bait. Level 37, quality rare, contained spiritual energy greater than 1,724 points. Edible effect: long-term consumption can enhance spiritual power. Collectible, flashing light, absorbable. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. What a weirdo. There really isn't lanternfish in this shape. What's wrong with having a head? With a horn, you can poke people. You grew AF * king lamp out to illuminate yourself. What an ingenious idea. Sizzle. Before Han Fei could retreat, a large amount of electric light, like a small lightning bolt, fell on him in an instant. Han Fei was speechless. F * CK, I'm still far from you. Shoo. Shoo. Ayah, huh? Who shouted? Han Fei was shocked. It wasn't him who shouted. Ah. Chapter 329. A strange feeling came to Han Fei's heart. I was F * king electrocuted, but I didn't even scream. Who was it? However, following that, the sound of la 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 came from the sea again, as if someone was singing. Han Fei was a little stunned. Who would come to the bottom of the sea to sing? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! The blue sea wandering dragon daggers darted out. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp attacked on its own, but it was also electrocuted. At this moment, the nine-star chain swept into the school of lanternfish, catching one with its tail and crushing another to death. When the group of lanternfish saw that the other side could still fight back, they immediately scattered and seemed to increase the electric current. Sizzle. However, they didn't know that Han Fei had been electrocuted countless times. At this moment, Han Fei was stretching his body and letting the electric current flow in his body. Although Han Fei was also twitching slightly, he was not scared. The electric current of the anglerfish was much stronger than that of the piercing electricity jellyfish, but its quantity was much smaller. Compared to dragon eels, their electric currents were not as strong. Therefore, this level of electric current was actually good for Han Fei. Nine tails come back. Han Fei recalled the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and did not attack, but let these lantern fish discharge at him. He took this opportunity to relax a little. He practiced the indestructible body art to see if he could break through the upper limit of 4,199 points of spiritual energy. Of course, Han Fei didn't devote himself to it. Lien. He held a knife in his hand and was on guard at all times. The singing voice had disappeared, and it made him feel very strange. This was also the reason why he didn't rashly head over, instead of running down to search for it. Only God knew what he would find. Following that, he would have to fight again. It would be better for him to enjoy the electric shock therapy. It might even improve his physique. An hour later, the lantern fish were all stunned. What have we electrocuted? Why is there no end to it? He's still alive? Some lanternfish ran out of electricity, and even their breath was a little weaker. They wagged their tails and wanted to leave. However, Han Fei waved his fishing rod and hooked the weak lanternfish back. The lanternfish that was hooked was shocked and hurriedly exerted all the electricity in its body, sizzling at Han Fei. As a result, after their electricity ran out, Han Fei cut off the flashing lights on their heads. When the hundreds of lanternfish in this area finished discharging their electricity, Han Fei could catch one with a swing of his rod. How refreshing! It felt the same when other people petted cats, and I petted fish. However, most of the lanternfish still ran away, and Han Fei only collected less than 50 flashing lights. La 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 la, ah! Suddenly the voice appeared again. Han Fei quickly looked around and spread out his spiritual perception, but found nothing. Han Fei immediately cast out the hook and circled around, but still found nothing. Squeak! Han Fei's face darkened. The voice sounded like a fisherwoman humming in the river. The voice was very clear and could even be considered very pure. However, no matter how pure the sound was, it didn't make sense for it to appear in the deep sea. Han Fei immediately activated a spiritual energy protective cover and swam forward tentatively. Along the way, Han Fei ignored the shrimps that tried to attack him. Under the strait, there were very few spiritual plants, and he had only seen lanternfish so far. After swimming for dozens of kilometers, Han Fei was suddenly taken aback. He saw tadpole? Yes. Han Fei didn't think he was wrong. It was a F** king tadpole, but it was as big as a calf. Its body was chubby, and it had a long tail. At this moment, this tadpole was floating in the water, its body swaying slightly. A string of data appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name, wonton fish introduction. The stomach occupies the IU of the body. It has the natural ability to devour. It's an omnivorous creature with hard skin that can't be pierced by non-spiritual weapons. Level 37, quality, rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 161 points. Edible effect, inedible, collectible, fish skin, absorbable. Han Fei was taken aback. What does it mean? I've only heard of wonton noodles. Why is there a wonton fish? And the IU of the body? What did he mean by all of them are stomach? While Han Fei was observing, the body of the wonton fish suddenly swelled up like a bubble being blown up, and as its body grew larger, the huge mouth that spanned half of its body opened. Han Fei was speechless. Its F** king mouth is even bigger than Little Black's. However, this was not the end. This guy's mouth was like a sail, suddenly turning over and over. The huge mouth was like 2 layers of fish skin. As soon as it opened, it doubled in size. F***CK. Han Fei felt a strong suction force around his body. The big mouth, which was a bit similar to that of a plate ray, shocked him. Immediately, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers swept out. However, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers that shot out were sucked away by this suction force and spun directly in the sea. Then they were swallowed into the belly of this wonton fish. Han Fei's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly tried to pull the daggers out. However, he suddenly found that the blue sea wandering dragon daggers that were sucked into the belly of the wonton fish faintly lost contact with them. Immediately afterward, Han Fei found that his body flew uncontrollably towards the wonton fish. This caused him to be horrified. What kind of ghost fish is this? What's so great about having a big stomach? Han Fei let his body be sucked over, holding the 2 blue sea wandering dragon daggers in his hands, which shone brightly at this moment. Rip! Just when Han Fei was about to be sucked into the mouth of this wonton fish, a cold light dazzled, and the big pocket-like wonton fish was directly torn into 2 pieces by him. Han Fei's body was covered with a layer of filth. Watching his daggers fall out of the belly of the wonton fish, Han Fei frowned, but found that he was a little out of control. Most of my remaining spiritual energy has been swallowed. How did it do that? Han Fei kicked the wonton fish lying on the bottom of the water like fish skin, and with a thought, he stored this guy in to forge the universe. This fish skin was really tough. If he kept it as a fish skin painting, it might not last for 100 years. Han Fei looked around and didn't find the wonton fish again. He breathed a sigh of relief. This thing was like a tadpole if it didn't open its mouth. However, it was really not pleasing to see a monster when it opened its mouth. Han Fei would rather have hundreds of lantern fish, so that he could play with them and help his cultivation. In this way, Han Fei continued to move forward and encountered a few octopuses. However, the octopuses were very smart and directly shrank into the stone crevices. About 10 minutes later, Han Fei heard the sound of pull, pull, pull again. This time, the sound seemed to be clearer. Han Fei immediately looked around. It was dark all around, and there were not many creatures. Clatter, I don't believe I can't find you. Stop pretending to be mysterious. Han Fei sped up and encountered another wonton fish on the way. He directly attacked and killed the other party. About half an hour later, Han Fei suddenly found that there was no way out. The strange song would occasionally appear, but there was no way out of this submarine canyon. No, the sound has an echo. That thing must still be here. Han Fei looked back, but this time his speed was much slower. He directly used his spiritual perception to explore all the rock walls and rocks he passed by along the way. After a full hour, Han Fei suddenly stopped at a rock wall. This rock wall was very ordinary, with some sparse seaweed on it. However, on this rock wall there were dozens or even hundreds of small holes. If it was just a simple small hole, Han Fei wouldn't pay much attention to it. However, the size of the small holes here seemed to be similar. Han Fei patted the rock wall. It was a real rock, not a virtual environment. Then, Han Fei put his ear to the rock wall again. Clatter! Han Fei's body suddenly jumped back and his body trembled. Just as he put his ear on it, he heard a song coming from inside. Oh, is it the sound made by a stone? Han Fei's face was gloomy. But how could a stone make sounds? Nine Tails, dig. I'd like to see what the hell it is. Thud, 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 as the 9 tails hammered twice. The sound inside stopped abruptly. Sure enough, since it can control the sound, it can't be a stone. 9 tails, dig. After a while, a small hole half the height of a human was dug out by the 9 tails. Because of the loud sound, it also attracted a group of lantern fish. So, Han Fei played with the fish while waiting for the 9 tails to dig the hole. About an hour later, a passage was dug out in this thick rock wall. At this time, Han Fei also finished playing with the fish. He swam into the cave in 2 or 3 steps. As a result, it didn't take long for Han Fei to be shocked. Shit, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that there would be another world within this cave. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp didn't just dig out a hole, but a whole grotto heaven. Chapter 330. The scene in front of him was more like a paradise in a large area of ruins. Inside the belly of the mountain, there was actually a hidden paradise. Here, there were large tracts of trees emitting blue light. On the trunks and branches, there were thin tubes which were clearly visible like the meridians of the human body. In those thin tubes, there seemed to be a moving light source, flashing dazzlingly like a racing lantern. Is this F** king blood? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder. On the ground, there were flowers that looked like spiral stairs. Or rather, these couldn't be called flowers. Their petals were emitting blue and white light. Before Han Fei could stop it, the curious 9-tailed mantis shrimp rushed directly into the flowers. The glowing flowers quickly shrank their petals and turned into conical flower buds. Around the flowers, there were also clusters of seaweed. However, they did not look like seaweed. Instead, they looked like long tendrils that covered the ground, as if they were laying a layer of green carpet on the ground. In the seawater, there were also colorful shrimps shuttling back and forth. They seemed to be alarmed and shuttled through this jungle like fireflies flying in the night. Han Fei's heart contracted slightly. It's so beautiful. Han Fei pondered for a long time, but couldn't find a word to describe this weird and beautiful place. La, la, la. The soft singing sounded again, immediately bringing Han Fei back to himself. Han Fei's face changed slightly. Wait, how could there be such a weird jungle in the belly of the mountain? Han Fei probed out with his spiritual perception and found that except for beautiful plants and some small shrimps, crabs, and snails, there were no other creatures here. The more this was so, the weirder Han Fei felt. He would rather believe that this was a dangerous, secret realm with ferocious, unknown creatures. In that case, it would be much more harmonious than the peaceful scene in front of him, wouldn't it? Han Fei glanced around. The cave was not high, about less than 50 meters high. The trees covered with meridians just raised their tentacles to the top and then began to grow horizontally. As a result, this place was like a paradise that was completely covered by plants. Swish, 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 30 blue sea, wandering dragon daggers appeared around Han Fei. Han Fei didn't believe that this place could be so harmonious. Often, unknown horrors were hidden under such beauty. Han Fei walked into the depths of the jungle step by step. The cheerful singing gradually turned into humming, and the voice was ethereal. Attach. With the 9-tailed mantis shrimp attached to him, there were 9 more chains behind him. At this moment, Han Fei's chains were flying in the air, surrounded by blades, and he was not afraid at all. Along the way, those strange flowers of different sizes seemed to have sensed him, and they all shrank into a ball. Some shrank into flower buds, some shrank into balls, and some directly burrowed into the ground. If only Luo Xiaobai were here at this time. Maybe she could communicate with these plants and learn about this place. However, he couldn't. He could only force his way through. After walking for about 2 kilometers, Han Fei suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Why had he walked for so long without knowing it? Han Fei's heart tightened. Singing. When he heard the singing, he seemed to be confused and had unknowingly entered deep into the forest. Han Fei looked back, only to find that the way back had been blocked by the plants that had bloomed again, and he couldn't see the entrance of the cave at all. As for himself, he was like an explorer walking alone in the Amazon jungle. He entered with a pleasant surprise, but he suddenly could not find the way back. Stop playing tricks on me. Suddenly, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers began to spin, and the surroundings were cut into a mess in an instant. The flowers were withering, the branches were cut off, and all kinds of small glowing shrimps and crabs fled. Ah! Han Fei didn't stop humming and ran quickly in the jungle. After a while, he seemed to have run to the center of this cave. Yes, Han Fei was sure that this was the center. He saw a red tree, less than 50 meters high, with long branches and sword-like red leaves the size of a palm on the branches, which were even more gorgeous than the maple leaves in autumn. On one of the branches, a red and white fish was looking at him. Han Fei's pupils constricted. This fish was even more beautiful than Little White. To be precise, Little White was more like a pure little girl, while this fish was like an enchanting, flirtatious, and beautiful woman. What the two had in common was that they both had long tails. On the fins, tail, and dorsal fins, there were long whiskers like ribbons. Han Fei was sure that this was the most beautiful fish he had ever seen. La, 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 la. The sound was made by this red and white fish. At this moment, the data in Han Fei's eyes showed. Name, Millennium Snapper, introduction, a fairy in the deep sea jungle, with a charming appearance and bewitching power. It can make thousands of different kinds of beautiful sounds through the scales on its body and has the ability to control spiritual plants. It can absorb the vitality of ordinary spiritual plants. In areas rich in spiritual plants, it is almost immortal and extremely dangerous. Level 3, quality, exotic, contains spiritual energy greater than 234 points, effect, after eating. It can permanently enhance the body's recovery ability several times. Collectible, non-absorbable, hiss! Han Fei was shocked by the words, almost immortal, and extremely dangerous, as well as the words, enhance the body's recovery ability several times. What kind of monster is this? A fairy from the sea? Giggle! The Millennium Snapper's voice changed, and there seemed to be a burst of laughter coming from its body, which made Han Fei's hair stand on end. Chi! Chi! Suddenly, Han Fei found that his feet were entangled. The seaweeds that had been hiding in fear were now madly entangling his feet. The trees with transparent meridians stretched out their branches. The originally beautiful branches suddenly scattered into countless filaments. The most terrifying thing was that the fiery red tree where the Millennium Snapper lived suddenly shook, and red leaves fell from the sky. But Han Fei didn't feel beautiful at all, because the falling red leaves turned into palm-sized swords, burning with flames, and shot straight at Han Fei. F***CK, little gold attach. Blade storm. Han Fei panicked. Who wouldn't be afraid of this? How could he not be shocked by the 360-degree tentacles and the thousands of small red swords coming like locusts? As little gold attached, Han Fei began to spin, and the seaweeds under his feet were broken. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers, the sharp, blade-like wings, and the 9 chains spun together. Han Fei was a human-shaped storm of knives and swords. Puff! Puff! Clank! 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 Crack! 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 For a time, all kinds of breaking sounds filled Han Fei's ears. Han Fei seemed to have become a meat grinder, mincing countless spiritual plants into pieces. The small red swords were constantly shattering, and a large number of spiritual plant fragments floated around Han Fei, forming a spiritual plant storm. But in Han Fei's perception, the Millennium Snapper was still looking at him and singing fearlessly. La, la, la! Suddenly, Han Fei's expression changed drastically. No, it's poisonous. Han Fei's expression changed drastically. The seawater was filled with a large number of spiritual plant fragments, and these spiritual plants emitted a strange mist, which slowed down Han Fei's spinning speed. A nerve-paralyzing poison? Han Fei immediately broke through the air with the chains and went straight to the Millennium Snapper. He didn't know if he could resist these poisons. Although he had eaten a lot of anti-poison spiritual fruits, and he even ate 1 2 days ago, what could he do? In the face of unknown poisons, Han Fei felt a kind of fear in his heart. Han Fei's body was gradually paralyzed. Han Fei and the fish were competing with each other for time. The chains passed through the sea of spiritual plants, trying to catch the Millennium Snapper. However, thousands of tentacle silk threads appeared in front of this guy. After paying a certain price, he managed to pull all the 9 chains. As a result, Han Fei couldn't spin anymore. Those spiritual plants swarmed up and seemed to want to devour Han Fei. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers were still spinning under Han Fei's control. However, there were too many spiritual plant tentacles, and some spiritual plants always entangled Han Fei. Bam! Han Fei's body surface erupted with spiritual energy, and after shattering a field of spiritual plants, the blue sea wandering dragon bow appeared in his hand. Swish, 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 5 arrows were shot consecutively. Wherever the arrows passed, all the spiritual plants were turned into powder. The Millennium Snapper seemed to be frightened and began to dodge in a panic. Spiritual energy arrows flew in front of the red tree, one after another. Each time, a large number of spiritual plants could be taken away. Han Fei didn't panic. Since you can also run, let's play. So, Han Fei shot the arrows again and again, throwing out 11,000 points of spiritual energy. In the blink of an eye, this beautiful jungle turned into a battlefield. BM, under the pincer attack of the arrows, the Millennium Snapper was shaken several times. This directly caused it to stop singing and turn around to run. Run? You're just like a human. You can't beat me, so you want to run? Did I allow you to run? Chapter 331. The ocean grotto heaven jungle, which was as beautiful as a fairyland, was bombarded by Han Fei with his longbow. He didn't shoot too strong an attack. After recalculating, each arrow contained about 0 points of spiritual energy. This was completely within Han Fei's tolerance. Han Fei had a high upper limit of spiritual energy, a strong physique, and a massive reserve of spiritual energy. However, for this Millennium Snapper, the total amount of spiritual energy it could store was no more than 2,500 points. It seemed to be weak in both defense and speed. Bam! 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 The spiritual plants exploded one after another, and a large number of sword leaves on the red leaf tree were torn apart. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the branches of the tree were not damaged at all. In the chaos, Han Fei couldn't help but pay more attention to the tree and read its data. Name: Big Red Trunk. Introduction: an exotic red trunk native to the marine forest. Due to unknown reasons, it is malnourished, so its strength is less than half of the original species. It's good at flying rain swords, and its red leaves will release huge heat. Level 3 quality mutated contains spiritual energy greater than 666 points. Effect: inedible, collectible, big red trunk, wood, absorbable. Han Fei was surprised. Big red trunk? He suddenly remembered that this was the main keel wood of the fishing boat on the list of materials given to him by the old man. However, Han Fei immediately thought, but this big red trunk is a mutant species and a low-level one. Is it really suitable to be the main keel? No, it can't be used as the main keel, but it can be used as a side keel. Han Fei was slightly delighted. He hadn't gone to the sea-born prairie yet, but he had already gotten one of the core materials of the fishing boat. Squeak! Suddenly, Han Fei was brought back to himself by the singing. The Millennium Snapper flapped its fins, and bursts of strange sound waves fanned towards Han Fei. Humph! Break! Another arrow! Battle Soul Gong! The fourth arrow burst out. The waves were shattered in an instant, and the Millennium Snapper was knocked away by the huge impact. The huge force directly broke a large tree. At the moment when the Millennium Snapper was blown away, the attacks of the surrounding spiritual plants also came to an abrupt halt. La! Pa! Han Fei rushed to the Millennium Snapper, only to see that it was still trying to run and sing. But how could Han Fei let it get what it wanted? Holding the water-dividing seal in his hand, he slapped it and it rolled dozens of times on the ground. This time, the Millennium Snapper had no strength to make a sound. Han Fei saw that this guy was almost flipped over and his intestines were almost exposed. Like a demon, Han Fei stood before the Millennium Snapper and said, "Surrender or die. Demon purification pot, collect." Seeing that it was useless, Han Fei slapped the Millennium Snapper away again. Return. Still not willing? Do you want to die? Bang. Return. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Bang. So many times in a row, the beautiful Millennium Snapper was turned into an iron-head fish. Its fins were broken, its tail was crushed, its fish intestines had fallen out, and its mouth was crooked from the beating. Its fins were broken, its tail was crushed, and its mouth was crooked, holding a blue sea wandering dragon dagger to the fish's belly. Han Fei said viciously, "I don't care if you can understand me or not. I'll give you one last chance. Collect." Han Fei never thought that he would threaten a fish one day. When he encountered the dragon eel, it also struggled, but didn't have the strength to struggle in the end. This Millennium Snapper, on the other hand, was not strong enough and could only control spiritual plants. At this moment, it couldn't even make a sound, but it was still struggling. Fortunately, the Millennium Snapper compromised. However, after the Millennium Snapper compromised and its body was collected into the demon purification pot, a phantom condensed outside. Han Fei was dumbfounded when he saw it. "Shoot! Who are you?" Han Fei was stunned. He even thought that he was hallucinating. He saw a human phantom. The shadow was a bit fuzzy, but he could tell that it was a beautiful woman. "Thank you. In Han Fei's mind, a weird voice transmission appeared. Han Fei was shocked. "Who are you?" The phantom didn't answer Han Fei's question, but said, "Don't eat the fruit, huh? Eat what fruit? Hey, who are you?" The voice was a bit intermittent. "Don't eat the fruit. Otherwise what? Speak. Speak clearly. Hey, do you hear me? Is the signal bad?" However, the phantom became dimmer and dimmer. "Don't eat fish." Han Fei was so anxious that he almost cried. "Wait, sister, you told me not to eat the fruit and fish. What do you mean? And who are you?" But the phantom became fainter and fainter in front of Han Fei. In the end, there was no voice transmission in his mind. The forest in the grotto heaven became silent at that moment. Where did this figure come from? What does it have to do with the Millennium Snapper? Unfortunately, no one could answer Han Fei's question at this moment. All this was like a mystery, but Han Fei remembered what the woman said. Don't eat the fruit. Don't eat the fish. However, the more Han Fei thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. What's wrong with eating fish? When I was in the Thug Academy, I ate fish every day. After collecting the Millennium Snapper, Han Fei turned to look at the big tree. Without saying a word, he went up to cut the tree. However, as soon as Han Fei started, he used the falling red leaves. However, a lot of the red leaves of the big red trunk had been consumed. When the red leaves fell, its branches were almost bare. After more than 8 hours, Han Fei finally cut down the big red trunk. He cut off the trunk and threw the branches in to forge the universe together with the bare branches, occupying a large space. Even the roots were dug out by Han Fei. It seemed not bad to put this thing on the bow of the boat as a root carving. It must not be wasted. After doing all this, Han Fei felt that this trip was worth it. Not only did he collect the Millennium Snapper, but he also dug out a keel next to the fishing boat. However, he hadn't finished exploring this cave yet. The Millennium Snapper was gone, but in such a large cave, was there no other treasures? But after walking forward for less than a kilometer, Han Fei was a little frightened. He actually saw several small tombs. The small tombs had no tombstones or inscriptions, just some raised piles of gravel, and there were 7 of them in a row. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Was it done by the woman just now? 7 tombs, of course, meant 7 people, but there should be one who set up the tomb. Han Fei looked around and found a stone platform not far away. There was a stone bench in front of the stone platform. It seemed that someone had lived here. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Who the hell lived in the sea? Didn't they breathe? He walked forward and saw that the table was already covered with mud, but there seemed to be a piece of fish skin under the mud. Han Fei wiped the mud with one hand and his eyelids twitched. It was really fish skin. However, this fish skin was already in tatters. Most of it had been broken, and only a few words were left on it. Half a month ago, the 8 of us joined hands and entered the sea-born grassland. It was said that there were rare spiritual fruits there that could change my meridians. It was already a miracle that I became a dangling fisher with a level 1 spiritual heritage. But it was too difficult. There was no way to improve one's body. I could only explore it by myself. However, if I had a chance to change my spiritual heritage, everything would change. Han Fei couldn't help but feel nervous when he read the first paragraph. A level 1 spiritual heritage and a dangling fisher. What kind of genius could do that? Han Fei couldn't help but have mixed feelings. It seemed that there were really a lot of people in this world who didn't accept their fate. This guy's courage alone was worthy of the word extraordinary. Han Fei continued to read. The man wrote, "The seaborne grassland is indeed dangerous, but the real danger is the jungle under the grassland. One of us died before the battle. There are terrifying octopuses there that seem to be strange poisons. There are black lobsters that have indestructible hard armor. There are horrifying demon shells. Until we met the big red trunk." Han Fei's eyes immediately glittered. Big red trunk? Was the big red trunk here brought from the seaborne grassland? However, on second thought, this place should be about 20,000 kilometers away from the seaborne grassland. Even if he steered the fishing boat at full speed, it would take him a day or two. Why did these people all die here? Chapter 332. Han Fei continued to read the fish skin notes. The fish skin notes continued. These big red trunk seemed to be controlled by some mysterious power. We didn't break in until we ran out of spiritual energy. Then we saw the most amazing view in the world. It was a branch that seemed to extend from the starry sky. The branch alone covered an area of almost 10,000 meters. A full moon seemed to be hanging on the branch, and fairies were singing on the shadow of the full moon. The branch wouldn't attack us. It even offered us its fruits. Up to this point, the fish skin map was already broken. Han Fei could clearly see the holes on the fish skin that were pierced by swords and the corners that were burnt by fire. In the following notes, Han Fei saw some familiar words. I mustn't eat those fruits. Those spirit fruits are too delicious. They can easily improve my spirit meridians. I feel like my body is being purified. There's a strange power fusing with me. When I turned around, they wanted to kill me. Han Fei didn't understand the rest. Obviously, the person who wrote the fish skin notes was badly beaten. The fish skin was dyed red by blood. Then the fish skin was gone. Han Fei became slightly vigilant. In any case, he remembered it. The notes were very clear. Under the sea grassland, in a jungle of big red trunk, there seemed to be an unusual spiritual tree. The fruits on the tree seemed to be very tempting to human beings and were inedible. Han Fei put away the fish skin notes and searched for other clues, but he found nothing. That's not right. How can these spiritual plants grow so luxuriantly without enough spiritual energy? However, this cave was not large. It was only less than 5 kilometers in radius. Han Fei swam around the cave several times, only to find some entrances that were the size of a palm or just small holes, as if the cave had been born out of thin air. In the end, Han Fei could only think that it was a miracle of nature. The coral reefs that stretched for thousands of kilometers seemed to contain all the colors of the world. They could not be explored or known, but they were there. Finding no treasures, Han Fei didn't stay any longer. Except for the Millennium Snapper and the mutant big red trunk, there were no other treasures here. It was indeed not a treasure trove, but a marine wonder. Han Fei didn't think too much about it. There were too many ocean wonders. Any place he swam to could be called an ocean wonder, including the undersea cliffs and the coral reefs. 5 days later, Han Fei finally arrived at the Seaborne Prairie AI according to the map. EI. When he found that there were more and more plants in the sea, he was greatly relieved. He extended the hook to the surface of the sea and observed for a while, before he secretly floated to the surface. If his guess was right, after such a long time, there should be someone chasing after him on the surface of the sea. 2 days ago, he met a peak-level dangling fisher at the bottom of the sea who charged at him without saying a word. Faced with a peak-level dangling fisher, Han Fei certainly wouldn't be intimidated. But when he showed the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, the man turned around and ran away. Because of this, Han Fei had been chased for 3 days. Thanks to Little Gold's extremely fast speed, he was able to avoid those guys. At this moment, Han Fei didn't directly enter the seaborne grassland. Although the seaborne grassland was to explore the bottom of the sea, it was not famous for the bottom of the sea, but for the surface of the sea. He thought that it would be a shame if he hadn't even seen the seaborne grassland before. He didn't think that the Sun family would find him. After all, the seaborne grassland was so big that it could be found anywhere, on the surface of the sea. The spiritual plants might not have been so dense at the bottom of the sea, but when Han Fei broke out of the water, more and more seaweed covered the place. The fishing boat took off. Han Fei took a deep breath of air greedily and then looked at the sea around him that really looked like a grassland. The surface of the sea was a combination of green seaweed and seaweed. This layer was not thin but half a meter thick. It meant that people could walk here. Of course, walking was also dangerous. It was like walking in a swamp. You never knew where your next step would land. The seaweed was covered with barnacles, and above the seaweed there were crisscrossing ponds that looked like reeds in the sea. They could be seen everywhere. Han Fei finally understood why this place was dangerous. If human beings walked on the seaweed, they would be surrounded by reeds. What did that mean? It meant that apart from looking up at the sky, the other 5 directions were all unknown areas, and they couldn't see anything. You didn't know if a sea serpent would suddenly appear under your feet, or if a knife would suddenly fly at you from all directions. Han Fei got it. Perhaps there was another reason why the sea-born grassland was so scary, and that was because the range of spiritual perception of dangling fishers was not large. At this moment, Han Fei looked around and found that the reeds on the sea stretched for more than 100 kilometers, which was a speculation based on the dense reeds here. There were only 2 ways to enter the grassland. One was from the surface of the sea, and the other was from the bottom of the sea. There was no doubt that some special creatures were hiding in the reeds. Of course, it might be less dangerous than the bottom of the sea, but Han Fei had never been there, so he didn't know. He stayed in the sky for a moment, and occasionally someone flew or rose in a fishing boat dozens of kilometers away. Shoot, are you serious? Is there really such a coincidence? Han Fei was about to run, when the other party's fishing boat turned around and flew away. Who? I was almost scared to death. Damn it, I just robbed a token. What the hell is this sea token? Why did the people from the 1,000-star city go through so much trouble to catch me in the level 3 fishery? Did they come to catch me in the level 3 fishery? Since it wasn't the Sun family, Han Fei was reassured. Perhaps this was the style of the level 3 fishery. Even if you met someone on the sea, most people wouldn't want to communicate with them unless they were on ghost boats, because you didn't know whether the other party was a friend or a foe. Of course, if you thought you were very strong, it would be a different story. Han Fei still chose to land. He thought that no matter how dangerous the sea-born grassland was, it was just an AI. It shouldn't be too dangerous. Besides, he saw other people nearby, which meant that they had come to the sea-born grassland. There were quite a lot of people exploring. After all, he could only see dozens of kilometers, but the sea-born prairie was at least 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers wide. So, there must be a lot of people here. When he was about 50 meters away from the surface of the sea, Han Fei began to perceive. He found a turtle hiding in the seaweed and some regular fish and shrimp that posed no threat. Only then did he put away the boat with peace of mind and landed on the reeds. When Han Fei landed on the seaweed, his feet sank into the seaweed after only 2 steps without him noticing. Hey, it's rather hard to walk. Then, Han Fei intentionally controlled his movement technique and cleared the way with the blue sea-wandering dragon daggers. Everywhere he passed, the reeds were cut apart. Even though his range of perception was greater, who knew if the reed marshes themselves were dangerous or not? After walking hundreds of meters, Han Fei suddenly looked down, only to find that a few green grass starfish had crawled to his legs and were trying to stab into Han Fei's flesh with their tentacles. After a slight vibration of spiritual energy, the green grass starfish were shattered. Apart from the starfish, a few snake-like, spiked knife loaches suddenly bit Han Fei from the seaweed. In fact, their speed was not slow, but they were just ordinary creatures, after all, and couldn't do anything to Han Fei. Before they bit Han Fei, they had been cut into several pieces by the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Should I go into the sea? There doesn't seem to be any treasures on the sea. He walked for another 5 kilometers. Han Fei frowned. It was obviously unrealistic to travel around the sea-born grassland on foot. The reeds were even denser than the seaweed at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei was about to give up before he even went inside. When Han Fei was about to take out his fishing boat, he sensed danger and subconsciously dodged to one side. For a moment, Han Fei glanced sideways, only to see a long, thin tongue that looked like noodles flashing by. Hew, Han Fei was shocked. How was it possible? He had been perceiving his surroundings. How could a creature have ambushed him from behind? The blue sea wandering dragon daggers had already been slashed, but they missed their target. A gigantic creature bounced and rolled its long, thin tongue at Han Fei again. Han Fei wasn't scared with the daggers in his hands, but he shivered and retreated the moment the information appeared in his eyes. Name: Green Arrow Venomous Frog. Introduction. This is an aggressive frog that lives in the seaborne grassland. It can easily kill junior dangling fishers with poison. It's good at camouflage and lives in seaweed most of the time. Level greater than 35, quality rare, spiritual energy greater than 1,620 points, effect inedible, collectible, green arrow venom, absorbable. Han Fei swallowed. Was it a frog that could easily kill junior dangling fishers with poison? Han Fei was slightly shocked. He probably couldn't resist the poison. The anti-poison spiritual fruits that he had could only make him invincible among the great fishing masters for a while. However, when the poison was beyond the level of a great fishing master, regular poisonous fruits couldn't deal with it. But when the poison was beyond the level of a great fishing master, it couldn't be solved by ordinary poisonous fruits. Immediately, Han Fei waved his hand and raised water shields on all sides. Seeing that the green arrow poisonous frog quickly disappeared into the reeds, Han Fei waved his hand, and 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers darted out at the same time, blocking the green arrow poisonous frog's retreat. Poochie, the green arrow venomous frog that had just crawled into the algae, was hacked to death. Its belly was cut open, and there were 3 knives in its head. Han Fei cleared the reeds within 30 meters with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers, and then dragged the green arrow poisonous frog out carefully. When he saw the patterns on the back of the green arrow poisonous frog that were identical to the patterns on the seaweed, his face turned grim. It wasn't that he didn't sense it, but that he was deceived by this fellow. What a powerful disguise technique, and it's only a rare creature. Could this be a poison sac? Chapter 333. When Han Fei plucked a blue sea wandering dragon dagger from the back of the green arrow venomous frog, he found that the edge of the dagger was green and knew that he had cut the venom sac. Oddly enough, the back of the green arrow venomous frog had different colors, so it was impossible to tell it from the seaweed. The dark parts were where the venom was stored too. Han Fei had an idea when he saw the venom. Wouldn't it be better to use poison when he was faced with an invincible opponent? It would save him a lot of trouble. Immediately, Han Fei took out a few bottles and carefully stored the venom of the green arrow venomous frog. After a while, Han Fei collected a bottle of venom that contained no more than 50 grams. Then he got on a boat and sailed to the seaborne prairie. He flew to a place where the seaweed was sparse and dove into it. A moment later, Han Fei appeared at the bottom of the ocean again. He looked at the jungle that looked like a dark forest and couldn't help but feel scared. When the 5 of them went to the deep sea jungle in the level 2 fishery, they had been saved by Wunrin multiple times. This time there was no team and Han Fei was on his own. So, Han Fei made a plan for himself. He could go in, but he had to set a limit of 1,000 kilometers. Beyond the limit, he would have to see if the creatures inside were dangerous enough for him. At the bottom of the ocean, without saying a word, Han Fei swam unsteadily. He saw that the seaweed and the seaweed that grew around the seaweed were floating in the water. Han Fei felt that his blood was freezing at the first glance. He saw that many of the seaweed had been hollowed out, and the leaves were broken and full of spirit swallowing bugs. The bugs were not scary, but there were too many of them. Han Fei stayed away from the seaweed that was full of spirit swallowing bugs. Although they were only level 3, nobody would have a chance to regret their decision if they were swallowed by the bugs. Fortunately, this was the seaweed on the seaborne prairie. The seaweed was not so dense here. Han Fei carefully avoided the spirit-swallowing bugs. After moving forward for about 20 kilometers, the seaweed became denser, and Han Fei saw a lot of sargassum. The sargassum in the sea looked like long snakes floating in the sea. If not for the fact that they were hanging from the roots, Han Fei would have attacked them already. However, the moment he entered the sargassum forest, he was shocked to find that the sargassum algae were shivering. To Han Fei's astonishment, a creature that looked like a line extended out of the sargassum. Name: Beauty's Beard. Introduction. This is a bloodthirsty worm that parasitizes sargassum. Its body length can reach nearly 100 meters. The bloodthirsty worm is extremely tenacious and not easy to cut. It kills its enemies by entangling them and sucking their blood. It can be used to weave fishing nets. Level 33 quality. Rare, spiritual energy, greater than 516 points. Effect: inedible, collectible, vine vein, absorbable. Han Fei was slightly stunned. Could these insects weave fishing nets? This was the first time it had heard of a material that could be used to weave fishing nets. The concept of fishing nets was not uncommon, but it was a pity that there was no suitable material for fishing nets in the Level 1 fishery or the Level 2 fishery. Even if it was the blood spider silk, because it was too thin, was not suitable for weaving a web. They met in the Level 3 fishery. However, Han Fei was not in the mood to think about how to weave a fishing net, because he was surrounded by the Beauty's Beard. Not to mention whether or not he could weave a net. The key was how to survive. Han Fei controlled the blue sea wandering dragon daggers to cut the Beauty's Beard. But when the daggers fell on the Beauty's Beard, he saw that the Beauty's Beard knew how to reduce the force and actively avoided the attack. Han Fei cut off a Beauty's Beard with 2 slashes, but when he turned around, he found that hundreds of Beauty's Beard were almost surrounding him. 9-tailed mantis shrimp come out and dig a hole. Having no choice, Han Fei had no choice but to dig into the ground. He roughly calculated that with his cutting speed, he would soon be entangled by the Beauty's Beard and be killed by it. However, to Han Fei's surprise, when he and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp crawled dozens of meters underground, plant roots attacked him. Could it be that these plants have all become spirits? Han Fei tried cutting them with his daggers, only to find that they were not like the Beauty's Beard that he could cut easily, so he asked the 9-tailed mantis shrimp to continue digging. Of course, Han Fei knew that there were many dangers under the soil, but compared with the Beauty's Beard and the spirit-swallowing bugs above, he still felt safer down there. After Han Fei and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp crushed countless roots and killed dozens of mess-swallowing bugs and several sea serpents, Han Fei estimated that they had dug for about 50 kilometers. Suddenly, he felt a great vibration above him, so he asked the 9-tailed mantis shrimp to dig out. However, before he got out of the ground, he saw 3 people hiding in the mud. Han Fei, the 3 of them. At that moment, the soil suddenly exploded. The 3 of them attacked Han Fei almost at the same time. Great! I didn't expect to run into a fellow traveler. Unfortunately, you are alone. You deserve to die. When all 4 of them rushed out of the mud, they stood on 2 sides and stared at each other. The 3 people in front of him, one with a hook, one with an axe, and one with a knife, were all junior dangling fishers. At this moment, they were all in the fusion state, and it seemed that they were going to kill him. Han Fei was lost for words. Hey, let's talk. Who are you? Who are you? Hee, stop pretending. You know the answer. Kill. The man with the knife charged at Han Fei with waves of knives, and the other 2 surrounded him from the left and the right. Han Fei said telepathically, "Are you really not going to talk? You can talk to the sea god. Kill him." BM! Hiu! A terrifying power suddenly burst out, and the water-dividing seal flew across the sky, directly smashing the guy who used the saber. The 9-star chains burst out so suddenly that the man with the hook had no time to react before he was tied up by the chains. The axe-wielding fellow was the most miserable. He only saw a golden-red shadow flash before his eyes, and then he felt as if he had been hit by a small mountain. He was sent flying more than 100 meters away and smashed into the sargassum algae. No, help me! Han Fei saw that the man was tied up by the sargassum that had been extended out in the blink of an eye. Countless tentacles tried to crawl into his body, but because the beauty's beard couldn't break his defense, they could only crawl in through his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Han Fei shuddered at the scene. Was this what it felt like to be caught by the beauty's beard? Isn't this a little too bloody? The other two were not much better at the moment. The man with the knife was slapped into the mud by Han Fei. However, he had chosen to abandon his teammates and run away. What a joke! He had clearly seen that golden red light figure. It was actually a contractual spiritual beast, the kind with wings. But how could Han Fei give him the chance to escape? After being struck by the water-dividing seal, he was already severely injured. There was no way he could escape. The blue sea wandering dragon bow appeared, and 1,600 points of spiritual energy condensed into an arrow. Like a sudden clap of thunder in the ocean, it blew up the mud and pierced through the escaping man. He didn't understand why this person was so strong even though he was only a junior dangling fisher. There weren't any flashy and long-lasting battles. Han Fei couldn't defeat peak-level dangling fishers, but he was confident that he could fight 5 people at the same level. The last person was tied up by the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Seeing Han Fei slowly walking towards him, he was horrified. "Don't kill me, I won't say anything." Han Fei smiled. "Really? Someone once told me that nobody in the level 3 fishery can be trusted. You can't trust anyone in the level 3 fishery. If you want to live, trade secrets for them." The man panicked. "I have secrets." Han Fei's eyes glittered. "Oh, tell me about it. You only have one chance. Seize it." The man looked at Han Fei as if he were a devil. "Will you really let me go?" Han Fei said impatiently, "One more word of nonsense, and I'll send you to the sea god." The man shivered and hurriedly replied, "I know there's a treasure trove about 3,000 kilometers deep in the seaborne prairie." Han Fei stared at the man without blinking. 3,000 kilometers? He had encountered so many dangers when he was only 100 kilometers away. Did this guy have the ability to go 3,000 kilometers deep? Han Fei said, "I told you that I only give you one chance. You're telling me that you can go 3,000 kilometers deep with your strength? Do you think I'm an idiot?" The man quickly shook his head. No, we have a map." Han Fei was refreshed. "Give it to me." Chapter 334. What Han Fei received was not a newly drawn map, but a tattered fish skin. There were mottled traces of corrosion on the fish skin, indicating its age. Han Fei asked curiously, "Where did you get this map?" The man stammered, I got it from someone else." Han Fei nodded and couldn't help but ask, "Just now, you attacked me the moment you saw me. You were very skilled and coordinated. I don't think it's the first time you've done this. So you guys run ghost ships?" "Yes." This person didn't retort. The people who ran the ghost boats were ruthless, and killing and fighting were common occurrences. If Han Fei hadn't killed 2 people in a blink of an eye, they wouldn't have been so passive. Han Fei wondered, "Then why are you ambushing me here? Did you know someone was coming?" The man nodded. Actually, the level 3 fishery, the seaborne prairie, was a place where ghost ships were gathered. Because it was hidden, it was hard to find them. Even if someone wants to kill us, this place is filled with vines and algae. If they aren't careful and fail to kill us, they might even die. Han Fei raised an eyebrow. "So there are a lot of ghost boats here?" "A lot." "To what extent?" That person thought for a moment and said, Every 100 li, there will always be a fleet of ships, but most of them are in the seaborne steppe. If we go deeper, we will also die. It seemed that this place was much livelier than he had imagined. According to the man, as long as he wanted to, he would be surrounded and killed every 100 kilometers around the seaborne prairie. This was a matter of course. After all, Han Fei was alone. In the eyes of others, a junior dangling fisher was naturally an excellent prey. Han Fei asked, "What's the deepest you can go?" That person replied, 300 kilometers. We lost 2 people that time. Han Fei was a little surprised. He had lost 2 junior dangling fishers in only 300 kilometers. The death rate was a bit high. With a thought, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp took back the 9-star chain, and little gold landed beside Han Fei. The man's eyelids twitched. He had never seen a winged spiritual beast before. The young man in front of him was definitely an ordinary person. His 2 powerful spiritual beasts and his unknown contractual spiritual beast all told him that the young man in front of him was a monster. While the man was frightened and thinking that he was probably going to be killed, Han Fei suddenly said to him via voice transmission, "I said I won't kill you, so I won't kill you. You can go now." The man was stunned for a moment before his face lit up with joy. He quickly burrowed into the soil and began to escape. But when he drilled into the soil, he didn't see Han Fei shaking his head. Han Fei shook his hand with spiritual energy and shattered the treasure map. It was just a fake map. It was too deliberate. Otherwise, he would really be interested in exploring it. Han Fei sneered. "If you run to other places in the undersea jungle, you may have a chance to survive. But why did you run out?" These days, even Han Fei was treading on thin ice because he knew that the AI in the seaborne prairie there must be a lot of people searching in EIC area, so he had been at the bottom of the sea, not even coming out of the water to breathe. If there was no accident, this man was likely to be interrogated. If he hadn't seen Little Gold, he might be able to get away with it, but once he had seen Little Gold, he would probably be killed. But Han Fei didn't care. He burrowed into the mud and took out the sea-swallowing seashell of the man he shot dead. There were not many things in the sea-swallowing seashell: a fishing boat, a spiritual fruit, less than 20,000 mid-quality pearls, and 2 low-quality spiritual knives. In terms of value, it was not enough. But Han Fei didn't mind. His previous losses were not small, and it was good to get something to make up for it. But Han Fei didn't leave immediately. He carved and fiddled in the soil for a long time, and soon a spirit gathering array and several auxiliary arrays were completed under his feet. The moment the spirit gathering array was formed, a lot of spiritual energy began to gather from all directions. Han Fei nodded in satisfaction. The speed of gathering spiritual energy in this spirit gathering array was already comparable to the intensity of a dangling fisher's cultivation here. As he expected, after only a few seconds, the horsetail grasses not far away began to stick out their tongues and swarm at him. Han Fei could also see that there was movement in the soil not far away. Crab claws, snake heads, weird conches, and a lot of spirit-swallowing bugs dropped from the algae leaves and floated to him. Han Fei also put a bottle here, in which he dripped the venom of the green arrow venomous frog. Han Fei sneered. "Hey, Sun family, here's a gift for you first." Outside of the seaborne prairie, Zhang Ming was running crazily. He didn't dare to stay for a second after he was out of the seaborne prairie. This place was full of ghost boats. If he was too slow, he might be killed and robbed if he was discovered. He didn't take a breath until he was hundreds of kilometers away from the seaborne prairie. He swore that he wouldn't get off as long as he found a dragon boat. However, when he was full of expectations, 3 fishing boats suddenly emerged above the clouds. A moment later, Zhang Ming almost cried. "Peak-level dangling fishers. You're running ghost boats too?" At this moment, Zhang Ming was kneeling on the deck. Before him, someone asked coldly, "Have you ever seen a young man?" This was the second wave of ghost pirates that Han Fei had encountered. But this time there were more of them. There were 5 of them. Due to the terrain, 3 of them escaped after a fierce battle. At this moment, Han Fei was putting away the 2 sea-swallowing seashells and setting up arrays again. Different from before, Han Fei set up 2 arrays this time, a stealth array and a spiritual explosion array. Even if they couldn't kill a peak-level dangling fisher, they could at least seriously injure him. At this point, Han Fei had given up on accumulating spiritual energy to deduce techniques or make a breakthrough. The seaborne prairie was full of dangers. He should reserve more spiritual energy for emergencies. After 300 kilometers, Han Fei found that a battle had taken place here. The algae had been broken, and the bodies of the spirit-swallowing bugs were everywhere. 300 kilometers! Han Fei couldn't help but frown. He saw a mahogany. Was this the dangerous place that the few people mentioned? According to the notes he got from the Millennium Snapper, the big red trunk appeared in the depths of the seaborne prairie. However, he didn't see the big red trunk, but he did see a sea mahogany. The sea mahogany was also an excellent material for fishing boats, but now that he was only 300 kilometers deep into the seaborne prairie, the sea mahogany here was obviously not very useful. One only needed to look at the traces of logging to know this. He roughly understood that many people liked to wander around the seagrass grassland. Perhaps their greater purpose was to cut down the sea redwood. It was the easiest thing for most explorers to do in the level 3 fishery. Without stopping, Han Fei continued exploring. After 500 kilometers, Han Fei saw a big black fish that was devouring the spirit-swallowing bugs on the algae. Name Scavenger Introduction. It's an ocean scavenger. It likes algae, moss, fish fry, body debris. There's almost nothing it can't eat. Its defense is very strong, and its body is as hard as a crystal when it fights enemies. Its fins can be refined into magic weapons. Level 36 quality, rare, spiritual energy, greater than 126 points. Effect, it causes spiritual energy to surge. And collectible fins, absorbable. Han Fei was stunned. This was the first fish he had ever seen that had a negative effect after eating it, wasn't it? At this moment, the scavenger had already discovered Han Fei. Its fins immediately spread out. Its head, fins, dorsal fins, tail. Like bones connected together, it looked like a hedgehog in the blink of an eye. Han Fei swam forward and was about to observe it, but it simply lay in the water and stopped swimming, allowing Han Fei to approach it. Clang, clang. Han Fei knocked it with a blue sea wandering dragon dagger, which made a crisp sound. Interesting. I won't kill you if you can take my full attack. Han Fei put away the dagger, gathered spiritual energy at the tip of the dagger, and slashed out a knife light. Poochie, huh? It's not broken at all. Han Fei's eyes widened. He found that this scavenger was completely different from the scavenger he knew. It was made of skin and bones. More importantly, its skin was half a foot thick. Han Fei didn't even know whether it was skin or flesh. Han Fei was speechless and a little shocked. This was the first fish that could resist a full-strength attack from him. Its defense power was not just strong, but ridiculously strong. Huh. Will the indestructible body end up like this? Han Fei shuddered. If his physique became like this in the future, he might as well die. Suddenly, Han Fei's eyes turned cold. He felt a slight tremor under his feet, and he immediately stopped enjoying the scenery. I didn't expect it to come so soon. Chapter 335. Zhang Ming was dead. His eyes were bulging before he died. He had barely broken through the mud when he was entangled by countless beauty's whiskers. Then he was cut into halves by an enormous crab's pincer. The few people who came with Zhang Ming felt their scalps go numb when they saw the scene. This place had been covered by the beauty's whiskers, and there were countless hidden dangers in the mud. The moment he broke through the mud, a couple of sea snakes bit him, and the beauty's whiskers were as numerous as reeds on the surface of the ocean. The few peak-level dangling fishers attacked at the same time. The beauty's whiskers were minced into pieces, and the snails, sea snakes, and crabs were all killed. Humph! It's definitely that boy. Someone said telepathically, "That boy is a genius. He set up a spirit gathering array here and attracted a lot of creatures. It seemed that he had intentionally let this fellow go. He knows that we're hunting him." Someone replied, "He's indeed a big shot, or so many of us wouldn't have come to catch him. However, he underestimated peak-level dangling fishers. Did he think that the beauty's whiskers and regular sea creatures could kill us?" One of them sneered when he saw the bottle in the middle of the spirit gathering array. "He even set up a pivot here. Humph, this little thief can't be far away." After saying that, the man grabbed the small bottle with one hand. In his opinion, the pivot of such a decoy usually contained good stuff. Wait a moment. Just as someone at the side reminded him, the small bottle, along with the entire spirit gathering formation, exploded. For a moment, the place was filled with dust and turbid. A huge pit was left on the ground, and 7 people fled as fast as lightning. At this moment, they were all covered in dust and looked rather disheveled. "Idiot, do you really think that the boy is an idiot? How can something that he intentionally left here be safe?" The others all looked awful too. They were utterly humiliated that a bunch of peak-level dangling fishers had been tricked by a little boy. The guy holding the bottle looked awful. He was about to respond when his face changed drastically. His hands and face were quickly turning green, and green poisonous blood was flowing out of his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. Not good. It's the green arrow frog venom. The other 6 changed their expressions and all backed off. Antidote! The poison man was terrified. In just a few dozen breaths, his skin had turned pale green. The green blood kept seeping out of his body. Who brought the antidote to the green arrow poisonous frog? Among the 6, one of them asked with an ugly expression. However, the others all shook their heads. The green arrow venomous frogs mostly lived on the surface of the ocean. No one had expected that they would need the antidote for the green arrow venomous frogs underwater. One of them said, "Sun Kun, use your spiritual chi to protect your heart. Let's see if you can hold on before we come back." After saying that, the 6 of them looked at each other and swam towards the surface at the same time. The antidote to the green arrow venomous frog was not hard to find. If Han Fei searched carefully in the reeds, he would occasionally find a common, detoxifying fruit among the reeds. Although these fruits were ordinary, they could detoxify the poison of the green arrow venomous frog. Of course, only peak-level dangling fishers could resist this poison. If it were a regular junior dangling fisher, if he didn't take the antidote in the first few seconds after being poisoned, he wouldn't have a chance to take it again and would have been poisoned to death. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, they returned one after another. However, their expressions were extremely unsightly. Sun Kun was already dead, and his entire body was green to the point of turning black. Damn it, their expressions were extremely unsightly. Just now, at that moment, Sun Kun bore the brunt of it, although Baoha couldn't do anything to him. But it could make the spiritual energy in his body fluctuate. Together with the poison of the green arrow frog, a peak-level dangling fisher was killed just like that. Chase, since that kid lured us here on purpose, he can't have gone far. I'd like to see how big a storm a junior dangling fisher can make. Beat yourself up at the moment when the explosion sounded. Han Fei set up a spirit gathering array and a spirit explosion array on the spot, not to kill anyone. He knew in his heart that at the level of a peak-level dangling fisher, not to mention a single shot, even if it's 10 bows, he might not even die from the explosion. However, he needed the spirit gathering array and the spirit explosion array under his feet to lead the way for them to prove that he had been here before. After setting up the array, Han Fei immediately went into the sea redwood. From now on, he was going to play an exciting game with his pursuers. Han Fei didn't know what was ahead, but he was very mobile, although he had the beauty's beard and the spirit-swallowing bugs. None of them could really threaten his life. Han Fei didn't wander in the forest, leisurely anymore, but sped up. The sea redwood was full of dangers. Han Fei saw a long bug sticking to the sea redwood. When he passed by, it opened its mouth and bit at him. Of course, Han Fei was also vigilant. He smashed it with a seal, smashing both the insects and the tree. Sea spiders floated down from the leaves. Wherever Han Fei passed, spider threads were shuttling back and forth. Many times Han Fei was entangled by the spider threads and had to cut them with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Fortunately, his speed was very fast. Many dangers did not have time to erupt, and he was able to avoid them. Even so, every few dozen kilometers, Han Fei would throw a mass of spiritual energy behind him. The seawater shook again. Han Fei smiled. The second spirit explosion array had been broken. In this way, the third spirit explosion array wasn't far away. He let the game begin. Hundreds of kilometers behind Han Fei, the 6 of them looked awful. They were blown up again. Asshole! Does this kid think he can kill us with a small array? I really don't know what he's thinking. Don't be angry. This kid is trying to lure us deeper. 1,000 kilometers is a boundary. Let's go there first and see if he has the guts to break into the 1,000-kilometer range. Someone gestured, be careful. This kid is a spirit gatherer and has been practicing arrays. He must have left a lot of arrays along the way. If he carves arrays in the sea redwood, we'll be in big trouble. It doesn't matter. It's not so easy to carve arrays in the sea redwood. Although the creatures, they're not strong. There are many of them. He can't fight while carving arrays, can he? However, no one expected that Han Fei was carving arrays at this moment. At this moment, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold, and Little Black were crazily killing the red spirit spiders on the sea redwood. This was a rare creature whose silk was very tough and could be used as a fishing line. But at this moment, none of the spider silk could approach Han Fei. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp, on the other hand, had almost been wrapped into a cocoon. It couldn't turn invisible, nor did it have Little Gold's extremely sharp wings. The 9-star chain was not a sharp blade, so the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was very uncomfortable at this moment. Han Fei said soon, "Don't worry, let's let them taste the spider cocoon." Half an hour later, Han Fei stood outside a purple bamboo forest. Although it was a bamboo forest, it was actually very weird, different from the bamboo forest in the deep-sea jungle in the Level 2 fishery. The bamboo forest in front of him seemed to be a barrier, an inner barrier of the sea-born prairie. Han Fei searched carefully on the purple bamboo and found a lot of stickworms, which were almost integrated with the purple bamboo. Underground, Han Fei found several longworms that looked like earthworms. They were smooth and legless, but he felt that they were as dangerous as the mess-swallowing worms. But even so, Han Fei didn't go in rashly because neither the stickworms nor the strange earthworms were strong. It seemed a bit strange. At this time, another earthquake came. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. These people came so fast. Had they already chased into the sea redwood? Immediately, Han Fei plunged into the purple bamboo forest without thinking about anything else. Are you risking your life? I can still crawl into the demon purification pot. What about you? I'm not Han Fei if I don't find the most dangerous place to trap you. Just when Han Fei rushed into the 1,000-kilometer boundary, the 6 pursuers of the Sun family were all stunned. They thought it was another spirit blasting array. But it turned out that they had rushed into a water dungeon array. Damn it, let's break the array. Swish, swish, swish. The 6 of them were really dispirited now. They encountered a large wave of creatures every dozens of kilometers. God knew how they gathered together. But here, the water dungeon array only needed to trap them for a moment, and they would be wrapped into a cocoon. More importantly, it didn't matter whether they could be wrapped into a cocoon or not. What mattered was that the little tricks that Han Fei left behind consumed too much of their spiritual energy. Chapter 336. Where there was a forest, there would be insects, whether the forest was on the water or underwater. Stick insects, a large insect, belonged to a kind of creature with a very strong camouflage ability in the insect world. Sometimes, if you stared at a branch for a long time, you would think it was a branch, but in fact it was a stick insect. When Han Fei rushed into the bamboo forest, he immediately regretted it, because he found that the stick insects he found in his perception were only a small part of them. At this moment, he still maintained a fast-forward posture. However, at this moment, a purple bamboo moved. At that time, Han Fei didn't feel good. I'm King, looking for insects on the bamboo. Who knew that the bamboo itself was an insect? And there was more than one such stick insect. Han Fei stopped and found that at least 5 of the 10 bamboos around him were stick insects. CK. Han Fei immediately used his semi-stealth ability, and at the same time holding 2 knives in his hands, he quickly attacked the insect limbs that swept over. Chilla, clank, clank, they were harder than he thought. Even these insect limbs could be used to refine magic weapons. After a while, Han Fei's face changed slightly. Unlike other insects, this kind of stick insect had sharp hooks at the top of its limbs. When they camouflaged, the hooks were hidden in the bamboo joints and would only be revealed when they attacked. What shocked Han Fei was that these thin hooks were extremely penetrative and could even pierce into his skin. Fortunately, these stick insects were not exotic creatures. Otherwise, with so many insects, if each of them stabbed him with a hook, his body would probably be pierced into pieces. Clank, 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 in the sound of knocking, Han Fei swam all the way, ignoring the minor injuries, because he also found that if he was slow, the big earthworms underground would rush out like sandworms, and their sharp fangs were very scary. When Han Fei was avoiding the stick insect, he was accidentally bitten. As a result, hundreds of tentacles instantly stretched out from the body of the big insect, trying to entangle him, and Han Fei was so scared that he immediately launched a spiritual energy explosion. However, what made Han Fei even more speechless was that the big earthworm, which had been blown to only half, still bit him and seemed to want to attack further. I'll kill you. 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers cut crazily and finally cut the big earthworm into pieces. But after being delayed for a while, the stick insect's tentacles were everywhere, and another big insect emerged from the ground. Xiao, Jin, attach! The wind is tight. Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself and hurried to escape. He knew that a mere water prison array would not be able to trap those people. He had to find a more dangerous place before these people broke the formation. In the sea mangrove forest, a disciple of the Sun family gathered half of his spiritual energy and smashed the water dungeon array. With another slash, dozens of red spirit spiders were chopped into pieces. The leader shouted, Sun Chi, you retreat first. I don't care what method you use. Pass the message to young Master Sun Mu. Sun Chi was the guy who split open the water prison formation. If they wanted to break the formation as quickly as possible, they would have to make sacrifices. Not only did Sun Chi use half of his spiritual chi for the strike, but it was also a strike that combined his essence, chi, and spirit. After this strike, it would be difficult for him to return to his peak in a short time, and his strength would decline. Sun Chi nodded and responded, Wait for me. Sun Chi turned around and left. The other 5 didn't look too good, and the leader said to everyone via voice transmission, Don't give that kid a chance to weaken our strength again. If we encounter a spirit gathering array again, just bypass it. While the people of the Sun family were breaking the formation, Han Fei finally passed through the bamboo forest, but his body was full of small spots like a hornet's nest. The place that Han Fei came to was relatively spacious, full of seaweed and reefs. Above him was a large number of tangled, rotten algae, and below his feet were countless shells. Most of them were broken shells of various colors. Not far away, Han Fei saw a big mussel swallowing and spitting. Among the reefs, a few black moon sickle fish were swimming quickly. Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This place seemed to be much safer than the bamboo forest. As long as he didn't swim into the rotten algae, it shouldn't be too dangerous. But when Han Fei was about to move forward, he suddenly stopped. He saw a large eyeball staring at him from a few hundred meters away. When he took a closer look, he found that it was an enormous, dark, green snake head. Shoot! A string of data popped up in his eyes. Name: snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus. Introduction. This is a mutated creature that is the combination of multiple eggs due to unknown factors. It has terrifying speed and high aggressiveness. It can swallow creatures 10 times its size. It's highly venomous. Level 39, quality, exotic, spiritual energy greater than 456 points, effect, inedible, collectible, none, absorbable. Shoot! Han Fei was stunned. He thought it was just a snake, but it turned out to be an octopus. Next to the snake head, 7 more heads popped up, which was appalling. Han Fei had goosebumps all over his body. He could accept a 3-headed snake, and he could accept an 8-headed snake, too. But then a shark head popped out right after. How did such a freak come to be? Seeing that 8 snake heads and a shark head were staring at him, Han Fei took a step back. He had barged into the monster's nest. Han Fei had already sensed that there seemed to be a spiritual fruit behind the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus. It shouldn't grow on a tree, but the kind of spiritual fruit that grew in clusters. A spiritual fruit that could be guarded by such an exotic creature must be extraordinary. If it were any other time, Han Fei might have to fight this monster for 300 rounds, and maybe he could even kill it. However, things were different now. There were still pursuers behind him. He had to slip away from this monster's face. Otherwise, if no one attracted its attention, wouldn't this guy target him? Han Fei didn't want to enter Forge, the universe here. As expected, although this monster was strong, it was only as strong as a peak-level, dangling fisher. If there was more than one person chasing after him, then this guy would basically die. He didn't think that he was really invincible after growing into a monster. So, if he entered Forge the universe now, when should he come out? Han Fei's original intention was to keep consuming those people's spiritual energy and not give them time to catch their breath. At that time, he would find a dangerous place, attract a large number of creatures, and exhaust them to death. Even if they didn't die at that time, it would be easier for him to kill them. But now it seemed that this plan was going to fail. Han Fei was in a dilemma. Damn it, let's do it. The water tumbled, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and little gold were released at the same time. The moment the 2 legendary creatures were released, Han Fei saw the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus shrink its few heads. Han Fei instructed, 9-tailed mantis shrimp, don't move. Just stand here and stare at it. Little gold, too. Don't attack without permission. With that said, the 3 blue sea wandering dragon daggers floated on the soil in front of Han Fei, and he was drawing arrays. This time, instead of drawing arrays with spiritual energy, Han Fei carved arrays with daggers. In terms of difficulty, this was far higher than drawing arrays with spiritual energy. Besides, this was not a spirit gathering array, but a concealment array. The concealment array that Han Fei set up before could at most block other people's perception, making it impossible for them to see the surroundings clearly. But now, if Han Fei left, needless to say, the monster would definitely follow him. If he didn't leave, the pursuers would soon catch up. He could only take a gamble on this concealment array that he wasn't very familiar with. 100 seconds later, a complicated array appeared. However, it wasn't enough. Han Fei poured more spiritual energy into the lines of the array. In this way, a concealment array finally appeared. However, the moment the concealment array was filled with spiritual energy, the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus couldn't help but move. Shoot, don't panic. This is not a spirit gathering array. There's no need to be excited. Then, Han Fei quickly set up a spirit explosion array outside of the concealment array. Originally, Han Fei intended to intimidate the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus with a spirit explosion array, but this guy was even more excited. Han Fei's face immediately changed. Nine-tailed mantis shrimp, little gold. Grow bigger. Grow as big as you can. Receiving Han Fei's message, the two contractual spiritual beasts began to expand in size. A moment later, two sea monsters more than 30 meters long appeared. The snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus was slightly stunned. Although the snakehead kept opening its mouth as if it wanted to challenge Han Fei, it didn't move in the end. Han Fei had to admit that different creatures could sense each other. Even if exotic creatures were of a higher level, they would still be a little fearful when facing legendary creatures. Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief and burrowed into the soil. He wondered if the concealment array could fool those people. To be safe, Han Fei felt that he'd better hide underground. Han Fei made up his mind. If he couldn't hide anymore, he would seize the time. He would hide in Forge the Universe and come out in a few days before they attacked. After waiting for half an hour, those people still hadn't come. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp's 9 tails were about to reach the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus's face, and all the snakeheads had opened their mouths. Hurry up! If they don't come, I'll have to fight this freak first. While Han Fei waited anxiously, the sound of bamboo joints breaking came from behind him. Immediately, Han Fei buried himself in the ground. With a thought, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and little gold suddenly disappeared. The snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus was stunned. It had finally gathered enough momentum and was ready to fight. But where were the two monsters? Chapter 337. In the bamboo forest, the broken bodies of the stickworms were everywhere. A cold knife light slashed through, and dozens of purple bamboos were all shattered. The 5 people of the Sun family finally broke out of the purple bamboo forest. However, as soon as they rushed out, they saw the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus dozens of meters away. At this moment, the 8 big heads of this monster were about to reach into the concealment array that Han Fei set up. Suddenly, 5 people popped out, which gave it a fright. The 5 people of the Sun family were also startled. They quickly stopped rushing forward. "Ho!" the 8 snakeheads suddenly roared. Just after the 2 tough monsters were killed, 5 more appeared. The snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus subconsciously prepared to run. But the people of the Sun family didn't know that the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus was going to run. Octopuses usually ran with their heads first, and their tentacles would push their bodies forward with the help of the current. Coincidentally, the monster's tentacles were all snakeheads. As soon as it started to run, the snakeheads immediately straightened and charged at the 5 people of the Sun family. "Watch out! Disperse and collect it." As the order was given, the 5 people immediately dispersed. One of them pulled away with a bow, raised the bow and shot. One of them held a long whip in his hand, and the sharp weapon went straight for the tongue. As for the remaining 3 people, one of them opened his armor box and drew out his sword and knife. One of them retreated and injected spiritual energy into the bodies of the other 4 people. The last person immediately summoned a large amount of seaweed and rolled it at the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus. Seeing the scene, Han Fei secretly took a deep breath. Now he only needed 1 more hunter, and he would have all 5 classes. But even so, the enemy was still too strong. It would be great if he could kill the enemy's spirit gatherer and manipulator. Otherwise, the monster wouldn't be able to resist them at all. The first thing that came to Han Fei's mind was hidden weapons. But it was too late to enter Forge the Universe to refine needle-type hidden weapons. Who knew when they would finish fighting? He did have needles on him, but they were all magic weapons and couldn't even penetrate their spiritual energy protective covers. No, the spirit gatherer must die. The snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus was completely dumbfounded. "I'll stop fighting, okay? I've already started to run. What else do you want me to do? Wasn't this bullying an octopus? When the torrent of knives and swords reached its body, the monstrous octopus was enraged. Its 8 snake heads roared at the same time. However, before it could finish roaring, a sharp arrow directly pierced into one of its heads, bursting its eyeballs. The head was pierced through, leaving only half of it. The bow-wielding Soul Master said, "Its defense is extremely strong. Tie it up and kill it together." At this moment, the seaweed vines covered a large area of the water. Seeing that the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus had nowhere to run, it finally made its move. Roar! The 8 snake heads suddenly swelled, becoming several times larger than before. As soon as it opened its mouth, a dark green fishy wind whizzed over. Hiding in the mud, Han Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. This was a good chance. This manipulator was too awesome. This large patch of seaweed had blocked his vision. Didn't this give him an opportunity? Little Black and Little White came out. "Go bite that spirit gatherer." Watching Little Black crawl out of the mud, Han Fei pressed Little White, fearing that his position would be exposed. Thankfully, those people were too busy fighting to notice the noises below the ground. They thought that the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus's roar was raising the mud. The spirit gatherer's face changed greatly. "Not good. This monster is poisonous. Maintain your spiritual energy protective cover." Their expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly dodged to the side. The enormous tongue was already biting at them. Unfortunately, it only encountered peak-level dangling fishers. Theoretically speaking, they were all on the same level as it. The snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus wouldn't be scared at all if it only encountered one. But it encountered 5 of them at once. It might not even be able to defeat a legendary one, not to mention an exotic one. However, at such a desperate moment, the monster dared not be careless. It suddenly raised its 2 tongues high. In the next moment, a wave of coldness and a wave of scorching air surged out. Crack! The man holding the whip was frozen together with his whip. Kacha! The ice was shattered, and the man hurried to cut the tongue with the whip. But all of a sudden he felt a pain in his calf, as if he had been bitten by something. Damn it, there are other things around. Watch out. Yes, Han Fei had asked Little Black to change the target. In any case, he had to catch one of them and bite it first. The battle was intense. Those people had been maintaining their spiritual energy protective covers. Of course, whoever's spiritual energy protective cover was broken first would be bitten first. The manipulator said telepathically, "Where did the other things come from? I've sensed them. Are you mistaken?" The man holding the whip frowned. While fighting back, he looked at his calf and confirmed that he had indeed been bitten. "A piece of my flesh was bitten off, and you're telling me that there's nothing else?" However, the man didn't think much of it. He thought to himself, maybe I was hit by someone's weapon. However, he did not notice that a small stream of water was enveloping a drop of light green liquid that was fusing into his flesh. Han Fei swallowed and frowned in pleasant surprise. He had to kill one of them first. Even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be a threat anymore as long as he lost more than half of his combat power. At this moment, all the scales on the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus broke off. In an instant, the seaweed that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had countless holes in it. On the other hand, the 5 people of the Sun family were bombarded too. The armorist suddenly slashed with his saber. With a flash of the saber light, a snake head was chopped off. It was chaos. The monstrous octopus was infuriated when the snake head was chopped off. Thousands of scales were flying, and the 5 people's faces slightly changed. One of them said telepathically, "Shield." The armorist immediately threw out his armor box. Several large shields flew across the sky, and for a moment, clanging sounds rang out as they were struck. Phew! In the meantime, the bow-wielding man shot an arrow and blew up a snake head. The snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus had lost 2.5 heads. Half of its head had been pierced by the bow-wielding man earlier. Han Fei was a little impatient. Freak, give it a try. If you go on like this, all your snake heads will be shot off. With such a big stature, how could he look good but be useless? While Han Fei was complaining, nobody noticed that the snake head that had been chopped off suddenly bounced up and bit through the armorist's spiritual energy protective cover. The huge snake had bit off one of his hands again. Han Fei was instantly refreshed. Is that even possible? But well done. Immediately, another drop of venom was sent into the armorist's body by the water current. It was exactly at this moment that the whip-wielding man's face changed greatly. Not good. I've been poisoned. The manipulator asked in shock, When were you poisoned? Everybody backed off, only to see that the whip-wielding man's face had turned green. The spirit gatherer suddenly scolded, Take the antidote now. This is the venom of the green arrow frog. That boy is nearby. Han Fei was shocked. I've been exposed. Aren't these people too fast to react? It only took them a few seconds from being poisoned to discovering and guessing that he was poisoned. Han Fei's eyes bulged when he saw that the man took out a fruit. There's an antidote? Han Fei couldn't sit still anymore. Want to take the antidote? That was impossible. He would rather be discovered than let the man take the antidote. Hew, hew, hew. After shooting 3 arrows in a row, Han Fei revealed himself. Although he only killed 2 people, if he could get rid of these 2, he should be able to deal with the soul warrior, the spirit gatherer, and the manipulator. Not good. Thief, get out of the way. Han Fei's 3 arrows were not very powerful, except for the one that contained 0 points of spiritual energy. The other 2 were shot at the snake head. Everything happened too fast. The spiritual fruit in the man's hand was blown up by the sudden spiritual energy explosion. Han Fei said telepathically, If you want to fight, come on. I'll fight all 5 of you today. However, the spirit gatherer said telepathically, Watch out. Disperse. As it turned out, the monstrous octopus had gone mad after being shot in one of its 2 heads. The shark mouth that had never been used suddenly opened. Huh! The rolling sound waves instantly caused the seawater within a radius of several thousand meters to boil. Han Fei was so shocked that his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth bled and his skull almost exploded. Soul attack? Han Fei was shocked. But what was even more shocking was that a snake had appeared in front of Han Fei in the blink of an eye. It was too fast. At this time, Han Fei remembered that the description of this thing mentioned that it was extremely fast. Han Fei launched the water-dividing seal backhand. However, before he could react, he had flown into the purple bamboo forest. There were a few other people flying out with him. In Han Fei's surprised gaze, one of the snake heads was biting the bow-holding man and swinging its head wildly. Then, to Han Fei's shock, the man was bitten into 2 pieces. Shoot, you only attacked now. This octopus is so timid. If you had attacked earlier, I wouldn't have had to come out. Chapter 338. Han Fei didn't expect that someone would be bitten to death, not to mention being bitten into halves. In midair, Han Fei was surprised to see that the whip-holding man had taken out another fruit and was about to put it into his mouth. He immediately shot another arrow. Unfortunately, it was too late. Although the man was bleeding from the mouth, he was a peak-level dangling fisher after all. Besides, the freak octopus didn't seem to be interested in him at all after he was so poisoned. At this moment, it was attacking Han Fei and the others. Attach! Attach! In the blink of an eye, Han Fei spread his wings, dodged a huge snakehead, and carried a mottled long rod on his shoulder. Seeing that Han Fei was coming at him, the whip-holding man shouted angrily, Thief! Even if I'm poisoned, I'm not someone a scoundrel like you can kill. Then take my rod first. The iron rod fell heavily and collided with the long whip. Crack, crack, crack! Several joints of the spiritual whip were broken, and the whip-holding man vomited green blood. But he dodged Han Fei's attack. Sensing the movement behind him, Han Fei didn't even look back and launched 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers at his back. I'll kill you while you're weak. Han Fei knew that he couldn't give this man any time to rest. The water-dividing seal pressed down like a hill, and at the same time, a blue sea-wandering dragon dagger stabbed at him. The latter was anxious. Everything happened so fast that he had no time to call for help. He widened his eyes and glared at Han Fei. "If you want me to die, let's die together." However, the broken whip suddenly straightened, like a scale-shaped sharp sword, and at the same time, the whip inside Han Fei's body. Rumble! The two of them collided and smashed a piece of purple bamboo. A stick insect was about to attack, but it was crushed. Han Fei vomited blood. The long whip pierced through his abdomen, but the whip-holding man was even more miserable. Han Fei had stabbed a dagger into his neck. Before he died, the man clutched the long whip and pressed it against Han Fei's abdomen. Oh! Before he looked back, Han Fei had already smelled a bloody wind. He hurriedly picked up the guy under him and held him in front of him. However, in the next second, Han Fei saw that the man in front of him only had half of his body left. Holy shit! Ignoring the pain, Han Fei pulled out the whip that pierced through his body, cast the divine healing technique on himself, and spread his wings to fly to the armorist. Because everything happened so fast, the armorist did not realize that he was poisoned and was trying his best to resist the snake head. When Han Fei rushed over, the knives and swords around him were like a storm, and he had just crushed a snake head. The armorist frowned when he saw Han Fei swimming towards him. How long had it been? 10 breaths? In such a short period of time, 2 people had died in succession, and it was all because of this little thief. Han Fei grinned. There were still 4 snake heads and 3 members of the Sun family left. He was still too weak to fight. Han Fei suddenly drilled into the ground, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was released from its attached state, and it began to dig a whole head down, trying to run. Before the hole was 10 meters deep, Han Fei saw the opponent's spirit gatherer throw a mass of spiritual energy at him. Holy shit! 9-star chain. Clang! 9 chains flew across the sky, blocking the sneak attack of the snake head. Han Fei retreated quickly, glaring at the spirit gatherer. The huge tongue bit the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and shook its head violently. After a long time, seeing that the tail of the 9-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't be torn off, it was thrown away. Han Fei's face changed drastically. At that moment, Han Fei sensed that the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was seriously injured. F***CK, you're courting death. Han Fei took back the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, and at the same time he condensed 3 masses of spiritual energy in his hand and threw them at the 3 opponents. Han Fei was furious. Come on, throw them at each other. Let's see if you have more spiritual energy, or I have more spiritual energy. Han Fei shot an arrow, and 3,200 points of spiritual energy turned into a sharp arrow, shooting straight at the shark head-like octopus head. F***CKU, bite my shrimp. I'll shoot you to death. Immediately, a large number of scales tried to block the sharp arrow. However, with a puff, the scales were penetrated. The snake head was fine, but the octopus head was blown up with a big hole. Whew! A scuffle broke out again. The 3 parties were tired of fighting, especially the people of the Sun family. Their faces all turned green. How much spiritual energy do you have in total? After fighting for so long, how could he casually throw out 3,000 points? Especially the spirit gatherer, he was speechless. He saw a spiritual fruit being thrown in front of him and then exploding. Thief, Han Fei responded. F***CKU, go to hell. The monstrous octopus was short of spiritual energy at the moment. It was very strong, but it couldn't resist so many people. Seeing that 70,000 or 80,000 points of spiritual energy burst out, the 4 heads all darted over. No, Sun Chi, pull me! The manipulator of the Sun family was swimming over quickly, and a large amount of seaweed rolled over crazily, but he was still a step too late. The 4 snake heads bit at him from several directions, and in the blink of an eye, the the spirit gatherer was torn to pieces. He was the one who died the most miserably. Puff! Han Fei was feeling complacent when he felt a crisis of death coming. His body had just swum less than a meter when a knife slashed directly at his back. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was going to die. He was cut from the shoulder to the waist by the enemy's armorist. Ah! Right when Han Fei was cut, Little Black, eager to protect his master, rushed forward and bit crazily. In the blink of an eye, the armorist had been bitten almost 10 times. Little Black, come back. Han Fei was lost for words. That guy is F** king poisoned. Didn't you see him take the antidote? Why did you bite him? Han Fei flew back with the counterforce and threw all the green arrow frog poison into the water to cover the armorist. On the other side, he picked up the half-body of the bow-wielding man that was already cold, took off his sea-swallowing seashell and searched for it. Thankfully, he had seen that kind of fruit just now, so he soon took out a fruit. Enduring the excruciating pain, Han Fei quickly stuffed it into Little Black's mouth. Don't bite me unless I tell you to. Not far away, the manipulator of the Sun family looked at the scene in shock. In his eyes, Han Fei had stuffed an antidote fruit into a pool of water. Wait, there's something, and it's invisible. Unfortunately, he discovered it too late. The manipulator who had discovered it was about to escape from the battlefield. However, at this point, how could Han Fei let him escape? He wouldn't let him go no matter what. The 9 chains darted out again, piercing through layers of seaweed and waving crazily, just to stop him. Han Fei unfolded his wings and threw 2 spiritual fruits at the armorist who was taking the antidote. The armorist was dying. When he discovered that he was poisoned, the poison had already reached his bones. God knew how much green arrow frog poison Han Fei fed him. After all, he was still bleeding after throwing 3 antidote fruits into his mouth. At this moment, seeing that Han Fei threw 2 spiritual fruits at him, he cursed. Damn it! In the next second, the armorist was covered by the snake heads. As for Han Fei, he was raising his bow at this moment, and the magnificent spiritual energy was gathered in the arrow. The muscles, bones, and veins of his right arm were broken again. Heu! Han Fei vomited blood twice when he launched the 6th arrow of the War Soul art. However, he grinned. The battle was worth it. The 5 peak-level dangling fishers had all been killed. Looking at the manipulator who tried to protect himself with abundant seaweed, Han Fei sneered. Do you think you can block my tracking arrow with seaweed? Rumble, the purple bamboo forest was razed to the ground. With a thought, Han Fei recalled Little Black and Little White and stood still while the monstrous octopus swallowed the spiritual fruits. 3 seconds passed. The 4 heads of the monstrous octopus bit at Han Fei at the same time. However, Han Fei's lips were slightly curled. Bye, brother freak. When the 4 heads appeared where Han Fei was, Han Fei had already disappeared. The monstrous octopus was sweeping crazily in the purple bamboo forest. Han Fei had to thank the snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus. This guy was much more ferocious than he thought. Who could have thought that an exotic creature could kill 3 human experts of the same level? Even with Han Fei's help, the strength of its bite and the extreme speed were all indicative of its formidability. Inside Forge the Universe, Han Fei lay in the spiritual spring and cast the divine healing technique on himself now and then. This time he might have been lucky enough to have the help of the monstrous octopus. Otherwise, he could have killed one of the 5 peak-level dangling fishers at most, and he might have even been killed himself. Pooh! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking at his mangled right arm, he smiled bitterly. It seems that I have to make a breakthrough. Chapter 339. Han Fei discovered that the physique that he was once proud of was no longer invincible in the level 3 fishery. He was no longer invincible in the level 3 fishery. When he faced peak-level dangling fishers, he was wounded almost immediately. Just now, he was stabbed twice in a row, and almost split into halves. All this indicated that the advantage of his tough physique was diminishing. Han Fei felt that the indestructible body art that he was practicing was flawed. The flaw seemed to come from his current body, which seemed to be limiting the power of the indestructible body art. Of course, the more important reason was that the enemy's level was too high. It was hard for him not to be wounded when he was using a spiritual weapon that was 2 levels higher than him. Although the War Soul archery art was very powerful, Han Fei could only shoot the 6th arrow so far. After that, his right arm was almost crippled. Han Fei couldn't withstand the power of the octopus at all. It was extremely powerful. However, Han Fei hesitated. He didn't have much spiritual energy left. Since he didn't have enough pure energy, he could only temper his body with spiritual energy. Based on the previous breakthroughs, if he made another breakthrough after recovering from his wounds, he would probably drain all the spiritual energy in his body. However, there was nothing Han Fei could do. He didn't know if the next wave of people would catch up. He even knew that he would be wounded again after fighting the monstrous octopus. Let's do it. Suddenly, Han Fei made up his mind. He had only been 1,000 kilometers into the sea-born prairie, and he had already encountered such a powerful creature as the monstrous octopus. It wouldn't be easy in the future. After all, he hadn't even seen the big red trunk yet. A day later, Han Fei's body was almost recovered. However, the spiritual pool was almost empty too. Han Fei calculated roughly and found that there were no more than 300,000 points of spiritual energy left. There were only 2 million points of spiritual energy left in the demon purification pot, which was only 5 million points in total. Han Fei gritted his teeth. Break! In an instant, spiritual energy enveloped Han Fei's body like a storm. The spiritual pool under Han Fei's buttocks suddenly dried up and was sucked dry before there was even a splash. The reserve of spiritual energy in the demon purification pot was dwindling at a terrifying speed. At the same time, spiritual energy flowed incessantly in Han Fei's limbs and bones. His meridians were being widened, his bones and flesh were being tempered. His body was being tempered. 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. It was not until the stored spiritual energy reached 1,000,000 points that Han Fei felt that his level was loosening. An hour later, with a crisp crack, Han Fei successfully broke through the realm of a junior dangling fisher and steadily stepped into the realm of an intermediate dangling fisher. After another 2 hours, Han Fei was sweating profusely and frowning. He had a bad feeling. He only had 500,000 points of spiritual energy left, but his flesh and bones were still being tempered crazily without any sign of stopping. 500,000, 300,000, 100,000. Han Fei became more and more anxious. No, even though he still had 2 more spiritual fruits, it didn't seem to be enough. When the spiritual energy was exhausted to the freezing point, the 2 spiritual fruits in Forge the Universe flew directly to Han Fei and shattered, turning into billowing spiritual energy that surged into Han Fei's body. Unfortunately, the 2 spirit fruits only lasted for less than half an incense stick of time before they were completely consumed. Damn it! Puffed! Han Fei vomited a mouthful of blood and forcibly stopped the tempering of his body. The spiritual energy required for this breakthrough completely exceeded his calculation, reaching nearly 5 million points. Even so, he still couldn't break through to the perfect state. At this moment, Han Fei was so hungry that he lost a lot of weight. He gritted his teeth and glanced at the data. Owner, Han Fei, level greater than 36, intermediate dangling fisher. Spiritual energy 0, 4502, spiritual heritage level 4. High quality, damaged. Spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit, swallowing fish level 25. Weapon, blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Main art, water vein technique. Volume 3 of void fishing, spirit level, divine quality. Han Fei's eyelids twitched, and he took a deep breath. My spiritual heritage is damaged? Han Fei was shocked. Yes, including this time he was almost killed twice in a row. His body was pierced several times and multiple spiritual weapons exploded. Will all these affect my spiritual heritage? Han Fei's eyes turned cold. No wonder he consumed so much spiritual energy this time. It turned out that his spiritual heritage was damaged too. That wouldn't do. His spiritual heritage wasn't as good as other people's, and it was damaged too. If another 5 people from the Sun family came, he wouldn't be able to defeat them. Han Fei's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in the purple bamboo forest. Instead of looking for the snake tentacle, shark-faced octopus, he swam to the place where the Sun family members died. 5 of them died, and one of their sea-swallowing seashells was robbed by him. There should be 4 sea-swallowing seashells left. He was in desperate need of spiritual energy, and it was unrealistic to steal the spiritual fruit guarded by the octopus. After all, he didn't have any reserves of spiritual energy at all. It was questionable whether or not he could defeat it. No, if he didn't summon the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and little gold, he wouldn't be able to defeat it. Very soon, Han Fei picked up the manipulator's sea-swallowing seashell and scanned it, only to be lost for words. There was not a single spiritual fruit in it. Damn it! You're a peak-level dangling fisher. You don't even have a spiritual fruit in your sea-swallowing seashell. Is it appropriate? Han Fei looked back, only to find that a snake had popped up from the seaweed not far away. Immediately, Han Fei was lost for words. This freak is still haunting me. Am I in your way when I'm looking for something? Next to Han Fei, Little Gold and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp appeared at the same time. However, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was rather lethargic at this moment. It was obvious that it had been bitten by the octopus yesterday. However, when the 2 legendary creatures appeared, the snake tentacle, shark-faced octopus grew wary again. It wasn't stupid. It didn't want to fight anymore when it was reduced to 4 and had a big hole in its head. However, this thief was exactly the guy who shot a hole in its head. It couldn't forget the grudge. More importantly, the monstrous octopus was stuck before the spiritual fruit. It couldn't give up the spiritual fruit that it had guarded for such a long time. Han Fei didn't care about that and quickly picked up 2 sea-swallowing seashells. This time, he found 3 spiritual fruits. Delighted, Han Fei searched for the 4th one. However, he didn't find it. He looked again, only to find that one of them only had a calf bone left. What was his body used for? He didn't know what had eaten it. Han Fei immediately looked at the monstrous octopus. Needless to say, it must be that guy. It swallowed the man along with the sea-swallowing seashells into its stomach. After staring at the monstrous octopus for a few seconds, Han Fei suddenly disappeared. The monstrous octopus was stunned. Where did he go? Why is he gone again? Forge the universe. Han Fei swallowed the 3 spiritual fruits, one at a time. When the spiritual energy in his body rolled again, his slim body recovered a little because of the nourishment of spiritual energy. Seeing that, Han Fei was finally relieved. Whew! Han Fei took a long breath of relief. Seeing that his spiritual energy had recovered to 23,242 points, he was more confident. However, he looked at his body, only to find that he was a little thin because of the lack of spiritual energy. It seemed that he had to find a way to return to his peak as soon as possible. Although his spiritual energy had recovered a little, he didn't dare to use it recklessly. This was all the spiritual energy he had at present, and it was definitely not enough for him to repair his damaged spiritual heritage. Of course, injuries were injuries, and he had gotten thinner, but his strength had also improved tremendously. In terms of strength alone, Han Fei felt that he could easily break 10,000 kilograms. He grabbed the stick with one hand and immediately felt a lot lighter. He didn't feel as pressured as before when he had to carry it to wave it. He could use it now. The only thing he felt was that the stick was a little too heavy overall, and it wasn't easy to use. Hee hee, as long as I can use it, When my strength returns to my peak, it will be easy to use. Chapter 340. The octopus was lost for words. It had never hated a person as much as it did now. With a whoosh, it disappeared, and with a whoosh, it appeared again. Han Fei made a dare not sleep anymore. Yes, Han Fei was out again. This time his goal was clear. He either killed the octopus or tamed it. As for the spiritual fruit, it was already Han Fei's. Little Black had already snuck away. All he needed to do was distract the octopus's attention. Han Fei looked at the 4 heads of the octopus, which were looking at him uncertainly. He couldn't help but mumble, "This guy is not easy to deal with." If it bit him, Han Fei wasn't sure if he could take it with his current body. Holding his rod, Han Fei looked at Little Gold and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. "Let's attack together and kill it." Han Fei's sudden movement stunned the octopus for a moment before it exploded in rage. It aimed its remaining 4 heads at Han Fei and roared madly. The seawater was poisonous, but it was much weaker than the poison of the green arrow frog. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't allow it to poison him. He covered himself in a spiritual energy protective cover and the water control technique. The 2 heads of the octopus were extremely fast, and they bit at Han Fei. "Shoot! You think too highly of me. Do you think you can deal with the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and Little Gold with just 1 head?" Han Fei quickly waved the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Enhanced by the saber manipulation technique, the million knife art was much more effective. At this moment, the daggers swept at one of the snake heads like a dragon out of the water. Han Fei, on the other hand, aimed the rod in his hand at the head of the other snake and launched a spiritual energy explosion. The octopus didn't know how powerful the rod was. It only knew that the human being was dangerous and that it would definitely win if it bit him to death. Bam! Rumble! Han Fei was flung back. The snake head was much more miserable than him. Half of its head had been smashed. Han Fei warmed up his body. His strength was about 3,000 kilograms, and his body was stronger than before. Otherwise, he wouldn't just be sent flying, he would at least spit out a mouthful of blood. Han Fei stomped on the ground and charged again. However, the monstrous octopus never fought Han Fei head-on again after suffering a setback. As soon as he opened his mouth, a cold current sprayed at Han Fei. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei was frozen into ice. Kacha! Spiritual energy shattered the ice, and Han Fei felt cold all over. He was speechless. He had never understood where these creatures' strange abilities came from. Is there ice in your stomach? Or do you have a skill too? On the other hand, after being bitten by the monstrous octopus last time, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp didn't dare to whip it with the 9-tailed chain anymore. At this moment, Han Fei saw that the 9-tailed mantis shrimp finally returned to its original nature, and a huge snake head swam towards it. In the next instant, the prawn's head was hammered into the soil by its 2 fists. Han Fei smiled casually. If the 9-tailed mantis shrimp hadn't smashed its head, he would have forgotten that it was a mantis shrimp. Maybe in other aspects, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't beat the monstrous octopus. But in terms of smashing its head, even 10 monstrous octopuses were definitely no match for the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Han Fei couldn't even see the 9-tailed mantis shrimp's attack. He could only see the flaky feet under it fluttering, and the 2 sweeping limbs were ready to launch an attack. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp swam directly to the shark head. However, the shark head roared. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp was scared back by the roar. Han Fei was shocked by this soul attack and was bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth. Damn, the strength of his soul couldn't keep up. The powerful effect of the soul resistance bead seemed to be out of date. No, it seems that the cultivation of the god-scaring painting has to be put on the agenda again. Swish, Han Fei put away the rod, took out the blue sea wandering dragon bow, and shot the shark head 1 arrow after another. I'll let you shout, I'll let you scream. I'll shoot you until you croak. Han Fei shot a dozen spiritual arrows at once, which cost 00 points per arrow. The monstrous octopus's head seemed to have been struck by lightning, exploding left and right. Squeak! Little Gold folded its wings, swung the snake head away, and bumped its head against the shark head. Rumble! Smoke and dust billowed within 100 meters. When Han Fei saw it clearly again, he saw that there was a big hole in the monstrous octopus's head. And Little Black had swam back at this moment, biting a vine with a pale, red fruit hanging on it in its mouth. Han Fei took a look at it, and his face suddenly became awful. Name Angry Spirit Fruit Introduction. This is a spiritual fruit that grows in the land of anger and resentment. It contains a lot of spiritual energy and is easy to get angry when eaten. Level, spiritual level, quality, advanced, contains spiritual energy, 210564. Note, don't eat it easily, or it may cause unpredictable consequences. F***CK, Han Fei almost vomited blood. The spiritual fruit guarded by such a powerful, monstrous octopus turned out to be nothing more than this, with all kinds of negative effects and mutations. Did this octopus become like this after eating this fruit? Han Fei was immediately infuriated. He turned 3,200 points of spiritual energy into an arrow and shot it out. Damn it, you liar! You son of a B****T. I thought you were protecting something good by hiding it. It turns out to be a garbage spiritual fruit. Rumble! The arrow failed to penetrate the octopus's head because a snake head suddenly blocked its head. BM, the snake head exploded, and the monstrous octopus was about to launch another soul attack in fury. Unfortunately, Han Fei's arrow cost 3,200 points of spiritual energy. He was determined to kill him. The tentacles that had lost the snake heads bulged together, trying to block Han Fei's arrow. But there was a sound of after that the monstrous octopus's body was blasted into pieces. Swish! When Han Fei was about to shoot a third arrow, a snake head floated past his eyes. He turned around, only to see that Little Gold had successfully cut off one of the snake heads like a sharp blade. Huh! Good job, Little Gold. The monstrous octopus, which only had 2 snake heads left, immediately wanted to run away. At this moment, the spiritual fruit had been snatched away. Why was it still guarding it? If it didn't run away, it would be killed. He had to admit that the octopus was indeed an extremely smart creature. Han Fei shouted, "Where are you going?" "Little Black, I want to bite you." "Little Gold, chop off another snake head," seeing that there were only 2 snake heads left, and one of them had half of its head smashed by the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Han Fei was no longer afraid. At this moment, he quickly swam to the monstrous octopus. Collect the monster. In the monstrous octopus's frightened eyes, the next second, the demon purification pot flashed with a green light, and the huge monstrous octopus suddenly disappeared. Han Fei saw that the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was still flicking its head, but it missed its target and looked at Han Fei in shock. Han Fei was also stunned. It would take him many times to collect other creatures. However, this thing succeeded on the first try, and the other party didn't even have the consciousness to resist. Han Fei was speechless. If I had known it was so easy to collect, I would have done it a long time ago. Han Fei snorted. "Hey, do you think I want you to be my contractual spiritual beast? In your dreams, I will never accept such an ugly, contractual spiritual beast." Now, there were 4 creatures in Han Fei's demon purification pot. An exotic iron wall lobster, a mysterious mutant devilfish. It was an exotic millennium snapper, and an exotic snake-tentacled, shark-faced octopus. Han Fei thought, if I collect another exotic creature, won't I be able to synthesize another contractual spiritual beast? However, he had some doubts in his heart. It seemed that, so far, he hadn't heard of anyone having a third contractual spiritual beast. He hadn't asked about this before. It seemed that he would have to find an opportunity to ask about it in the future. Han Fei couldn't help thinking, if I go to the sea to hunt for treasures in the future with a group of legendary sea monsters, what a magnificent scene it will be! In this case, will I be able to easily sweep through the dangerous, secret realms without having to do anything? However, as soon as he turned his head, Han Fei's face fell again. The consumption of spiritual energy was huge. Now he had to consume a large amount of spiritual energy every time he fought. In the battle just now, Han Fei consumed 30,000 points of spiritual energy. Now he had a total of 20,016 points of spiritual energy left. With such a small amount of spiritual energy, according to the pattern of yesterday's battle, he wouldn't even be able to last 2 rounds before he would be completely exhausted. Han Fei looked at the angry spirit fruit in his hand, and an indescribable sadness welled up in his heart. The most helpless thing was that he couldn't eat it just when Han Fei was about to put away the spiritual fruit. Little White, on his shoulder, suddenly leaned over and took a bite of the spiritual fruit. Hey, hey, hey! Little White, spit it out. This thing can't be eaten. Maybe you will become like that freak just now. However, Little White looked at Han Fei innocently and chased after Han Fei's hand that moved away. Han Fei was stunned. Little White suddenly became full of spiritual energy, and even Little Black's body was full of spiritual energy. The 2 little fishes suddenly swelled up. Damn! Upgraded? Han Fei was stunned. He leveled up already? Han Fei said eagerly, Daughter, do you feel anything wrong with your body? Can you really eat it? With a pop, Little White spat out a large mass of pure spiritual energy. Dumbfounded, Han Fei swallowed the spiritual energy into his stomach. The spiritual energy stored in the demon purification pot increased by 3,000 points, and Han Fei's body was immediately full of spiritual energy. Hiss! Han Fei looked at the angry spirit fruit in his hand and then at Little White, and suddenly had a guess. Could it be that Little White could ignore the negative effects? Chapter 341. Han Fei found another new ability of Little White. Unlike the monstrous octopus, Little White could ignore AA energy. There is no such thing as sudden mutation or chi deviation with the energy of An. Little White finished the angry spirit fruit in a few bites. Han Fei observed them and found that there was spiritual energy circulating in both Little White and Little Black. Unfortunately, they didn't make another breakthrough and were still level 26. But the good thing was that the negative effects of the angry spirit fruit didn't appear on Little White at all. As for Little Black, who was already grumpy, Han Fei didn't see any difference. Pop, pop, pop! After a while, Little White began to breathe spiritual energy at Han Fei. After a while, Han Fei absorbed 10,000 points of spiritual energy, which was equivalent to the total amount of spiritual energy of a spiritual fruit. Han Fei touched Little White's head. My daughter is the best. Although she didn't do anything at ordinary times, she still did the work for me at critical times. However, Han Fei still had mixed feelings. Both the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and Little Gold had broken through to above level 30, but Little Black and Little White were growing relatively slowly. Han Fei felt that these 2 little guys were still in their infancy stage, and there was no special change in their abilities. Little Black became fiercer, and his teeth became harder. Every time Little White came out, it still stayed by his side and never left his side. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder how he could enter the Soul Ocean. Was it an accident that he entered the Soul Ocean last time, or was it because he triggered some unknown condition? Of course, there was no answer to all these questions, so Han Fei stopped thinking about it. However, he didn't leave in a hurry but set up a spirit gathering formation on the spot. Then he sat cross-legged in the spirit gathering formation and began to cultivate. Nearly 300,000 points of spiritual energy were still too little, and the seaborne prairie was too dangerous. He had to find a way to get more spiritual energy. After only a moment of cultivation, Stickworms, red spirit spiders, black moon sickle fish, big earthworms, and all kinds of crabs swarmed over. Yes, Han Fei used the old way. Training was just a pretense. He wanted to be a fool. A large number of sea creatures came to absorb spiritual energy. When the first stickworm's bamboo hook came over, Han Fei braced himself and didn't move. When the black moon sickle fish swept over, Han Fei moved and the million knife art swept out instantly. Before the black moon sickle fish could react, it was pierced through. However, what made Han Fei speechless was that when the million knife art was launched, a large number of creatures fled quickly. Originally, he had planned to go on a killing spree. In the end, only a few stick insects, small fish, and small crabs died. Even so, Little Black only absorbed no more than 20,000 points of spiritual energy after biting several black moon sickle fish to death. Damn it, San. The creatures in the level 3 fishery were too smart. Did he just run away? Seeing that his plan didn't work, he could only leave a spirit explosion array on the spot. Little White, can you feel where the spirit chi is abundant? Han Fei didn't care about the big red trunk, even if he found the main material of the big red trunk now. He didn't have enough spiritual energy and time to refine it. Little White looked around. One moment it wanted to go left, the next moment it wanted to go right, and the next moment it wanted to go forward. It even wanted to swim upstream. In the end, he could only look at Han Fei eagerly. Han Fei was helpless. Yes, in a place like the undersea jungle, spiritual energy is actually everywhere. In such a large place, there must be a lot of spiritual fruits and treasures. He just needed to find them. Forget it. Let's keep moving forward. Because there were no pursuers behind him, Han Fei didn't sprint as fast as before, nor did he leave a spirit explosion array along the way. After the purple bamboo forest, it was a real world of seaweed and seaweed. Han Fei saw many strange sea urchins lying on the seaweed and gnawing. Because Han Fei was not close, these sea urchins didn't take the initiative to attack. But the seaweeds were very annoying, rolling at Han Fei in large swaths. If he slowed down a little, these seaweeds would surround Han Fei and then release some paralyzing venom or even paralyzing toxins. Of course, Han Fei didn't give them a chance. On the contrary, he could take a breath of spiritual energy. However, for some reason, the speed of spiritual plants like seaweeds was very slow, far slower than that of fish, shrimp, and crabs. Han Fei gave up after trying a few times. This patch of seaweed was not very wide, only less than 200 miles in length. During the period, Han Fei encountered several harmless small-scale battles, which couldn't hurt him at all. Han Fei talked to Little White from time to time, hoping that Little White could find spiritual fruits or something, but he was always disappointed. 1 hour passed. Suddenly, Little White moved and actively swam hundreds of meters in one direction. Then it stopped again and seemed to be a little hesitant. Han Fei's eyes lit up. There must be something in that direction. Since Little White took the initiative, it meant that there must be something in that direction. The reason why it stopped might be that Little White felt that it was dangerous. But Han Fei didn't mind. There were too many dangerous creatures in the ocean. For example, if the monstrous octopus was in its heyday, even if Han Fei could take it down, he would have to waste a lot of spiritual energy. But not all marine creatures were like the monstrous octopus. Many other fish were full of treasures. After a while, Han Fei swam forward excitedly. But when a ripple quickly swept over him, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Someone's here? Someone was fighting ahead. Maybe because the battle was fierce, ripples burst out. Han Fei immediately entered the semi-stealth state and stealthily approached. After a while, Han Fei saw 3 people fighting, all of whom were injured. What surprised Han Fei was not that there were 3 people fighting here, but that he met an acquaintance in this situation, Yang Ruoyun. At this moment, Yang Ruoyun's body was pierced in 2 places, her mouth and nose were bleeding, and one of her hands was bloody, and the other 2 turned out to be a pair of twins. Both of them were hunters, and Han Fei could see that they cooperated very well and seemed to have practiced some kind of double combat skill. Yang Ruoyun was being suppressed at the moment. "Who is it? Come out." Just when Han Fei was about to continue watching the show, two voices appeared in his mind. If it was not Yang Ruoyun's, then it must be the other two. King knew that the semi-stealth ability of the mist-hidden grass was useless. I haven't even gotten close, but I've already been discovered. As soon as Han Fei's figure appeared, Yang Ruoyun's voice appeared in his mind. "It's you?" Han Fei responded casually. "What a coincidence! How many times have we met by chance?" Han Fei wondered if he had been set up again, but on second thought it didn't seem right. Yang Ruoyun couldn't have known where he was. He had been away from the dragon boat for so long. Then he came to the sea-born prairie to avoid the pursuit of the Sun family. There was no reason that he had been set up. While struggling, Yang Ruoyun spoke telepathically. "Han Fei, don't you always want to find treasure troves? Help me kill these two people, and I'll take you to a treasure trove that nobody has ever been to." The twins seemed to have guessed that Yang Ruoyun was talking to Han Fei. They couldn't help but speak telepathically to, "Little brother, this woman has treasures. Kill her and we'll split them evenly." Han Fei sneered and replied to the two of them, "Are you stupid? Aren't you going to kill me after you kill this woman?" The two brothers replied, "Don't worry. You'll be wounded in a prolonged battle. Little brother, you're also an intermediate dangling fisher, and you dare to go deep into the sea-born prairie alone. I'm afraid that you're not an ordinary person. We won't give you a hard time." Yang Ruoyun said anxiously, "Don't listen to them. They won't let you go if I'm dead." Looking at them, Han Fei scratched his head and said, "Actually, I'm just passing by. How about this? Give me 2 spiritual fruits each, and I'll leave immediately. I don't want to be hunted by you later." In the meantime, Han Fei spoke to Yang Ruoyun telepathically. "I can save you, but why should I? Don't fool me with treasure troves. Give me something real. 5 spiritual fruits, and I'll help you." Yang Ruoyun gnashed her teeth and replied, "Han Fei, this is robbery." Instead of responding to Yang Ruoyun, Han Fei took out 2 daggers and said to them, "I'm here in the sea-born prairie for treasures. Give me the spiritual fruits and I'll leave. Otherwise, I'll protect this woman." The 2 brothers exchanged an awful look. Then one of them simply threw 2 spiritual fruits at Han Fei. "Spiritual fruits are rare. We only have 2. Little brother, hope you find the treasure soon." Han Fei waved his hand and accepted the 2 spiritual fruits. Then his face changed greatly. "Do you think I'm kidding? 2. Are you trying to get rid of beggars?" Han Fei raised his knife and pointed at the 2 brothers. "Give me 2 more, or I'll CK you." Scenes. Chapter 342. Han Fei's sudden change of face caused the 2 brothers' attacks to pause. Both of their expressions became extremely ugly. Just a moment ago, they were still smiling. Why did they suddenly change their expressions? Yang Ruoyun looked weird and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. "It seems that I'm saved." She couldn't figure out Han Fei's character. In her opinion, Han Fei was the kind of person who wouldn't get up early without benefits. After all, it was the first time that she had seen someone take a ghost boat runner as his subordinate. The 2 brothers said to him via voice transmission, "Boy, do you think spiritual fruits are everywhere and you can pick them freely? How can we have so many spiritual fruits?" Han Fei scoffed. "Nonsense. When I was on the dragon boat, I could buy dozens of spiritual fruits casually. How come you don't have any?" The 2 brothers were almost vomiting blood. "That's a dragon boat. There are hundreds of thousands of people on the dragon boat, not to mention dozens of spiritual fruits. There are even hundreds of spiritual fruits. But have you ever seen anyone carry so many spiritual fruits with him?" Han Fei nodded. It did make sense. In the sea swallowing seashells of the 4 people of the Sun family, He only found 3 spiritual fruits. It seemed that there were not many spiritual fruits. Han Fei shook his head. If you don't have spiritual fruits, give me spiritual spring. 100,000 spiritual springs per person. If you don't have them, I'm going to kill you. The 2 brothers wished they could skin Han Fei alive. At this critical moment, where did such a person come from? They couldn't let go of Yang Ruoyun. But if the other party really had one more helper, the consequences would be really unpredictable. So one of them said via voice transmission, "We don't have much spiritual spring either. Only less than 50,000 points. However, we can give you a low-quality spiritual weapon." After hearing this, Han Fei looked indifferent. A low-quality spiritual weapon? Why the hell would I want a low-quality spiritual weapon? Can that thing be used or eaten? However, Han Fei smiled again. "Give me the spiritual spring and I'll go. Take your time." The 2 brothers looked at each other and threw out the spiritual spring. Han Fei stretched out his hand and wrapped the spiritual spring with seawater, which made the 2 brothers' eyelids twitch. Is this the means of a spirit gatherer? Han Fei took the spiritual spring, glanced at it, and couldn't help but curl his lips. How can there be 50,000 points? At most, 40,000 points. This little bit wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. The 2 brothers looked at Han Fei warily. Han Fei turned his head and said to Yang Ruoyun, "What about you? Give me 5 spirit fruits, and I'll help you kill the 2 of them." The twins. Yang Ruoyun's face darkened. She knew that this person was up to no good. The 2 brothers said angrily, "Little brother, what do you mean by this?" Han Fei rolled his eyes at them. "Why are you panicking? I'll leave after I get some spirit fruits." Then he said to Yang Ruoyun telepathically, "Throw it over. If you throw it over, I can help you kill them legitimately." Yang Ruoyun rolled her eyes. "Who are you kidding? In this Sanin, the level 3 fishery, how could it be justified?" However, Yang Ruoyun threw 3 spiritual fruits to Han Fei without hesitation. "I only have 3. Han Fei, stop fooling around. I really do know the secret realm." Buzz, the twins immediately felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy. What the heck? These 2 people know each other? Han Fei grinned at them. "Give me your sea, swallowing seashells, and I won't help her." Swish! However, what greeted Han Fei was a knife. This knife was extremely fast and appeared in front of Han Fei in the blink of an eye. However, Han Fei grabbed the water-dividing seal in his hand and slapped the knife away. Why do you have to resort to violence when you can solve this problem with money? Can't you solve it peacefully? Can fighting solve the problem? No, retreat. Han Fei smiled faintly. Retreat? A 9-star chain appeared in the air and a longbow appeared in Han Fei's hand. Swish! Swish! The 4th arrow of the war soul art exploded twice in a row, aimed at these 2 people respectively. After shooting 2 arrows, Han Fei immediately put away the blue sea wandering dragon bow and said via voice transmission, "What a loss! Fighting really consumes too much spiritual energy." Yang Ruoyun was speechless. "How much spiritual energy did you extort from me just now?" Sanaa's spiritual fruit in the level 3 fishery contained at least 70,000 points of spiritual energy. You took 5 and robbed 50,000 points of spiritual spring. How could you claim a loss? But at this moment, the twin brothers looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. No matter how fast they were no match for the fierce arrows. When facing a peak-level dangling fisher, even the 4th arrow of the war soul art couldn't hurt the opponent. However, facing an intermediate dangling fisher, this arrow almost destroyed half of their spiritual energy. If one arrow couldn't kill them, half of their spiritual energy would be gone. Soul stab. Shadow kill. Seeing that there was no way to run, the 2 brothers reacted at the same time. They covered their bodies with a spiritual energy protective cover. Spiritual energy surged on their bodies. At the same time, Han Fei saw two pure black squids emerge from their bodies, and dozens of tentacles strangled the two arrows shot by Han Fei at the same time. Bam! Bam! The two figures fell to the ground at the same time like kites with broken strings, crushing large tracts of seaweed. At this time, Yang Ruoyin took the opportunity to approach one of them. The contractual spiritual beast she possessed stretched out a scorpion tail and directly nailed one of them. The other man howled in the water as if he couldn't bear the death of his brother, looking at Han Fei coming with a big seal, and then at Yang Ruoyin who was about to attack him. He suddenly grabbed two daggers and gathered all the spiritual energy in his body. The show had gathered all the spiritual energy in his body. At that moment, Han Fei retreated quickly, drew out his fishing rod, tied Yang Ruoyin up, and dragged her back. Rumble! This person had self-destructed. The huge waves and turbulence sent Han Fei and Yang Ruoyin flying. Han Fei got up from the seaweed and patted the mud off his clothes. That guy is quite cunning. I was almost tricked by him. Then he tilted his head and looked at Yang Ruoyin. Why are you here? Coincidentally, Yang Ruoyin also turned to look at Han Fei. Why are you here? Since both of them asked the same question at the same time, Han Fei was a bit unsure. You go first. Yang Ruoyin took a deep look at Han Fei. This happened because of you. Because of me? Yang Ruoyin nodded. That day, before you forcibly escaped from the dragon boat, I was going to find you. In the end, I saw someone checking your room and asking about your whereabouts. Later, I secretly followed those people and found that they also went to investigate your guide. I knew that you had offended someone, a big shot. Han Fei stared at Yang Ruoyin and asked, So, what does this have to do with you being in the sea-born prairie? Yang Ruoyin replied straightforwardly, Knowing that something had happened to you, I left. However, I didn't go far. I wandered around the dragon boat until I saw you jump off the boat with the guide and escape. With that, Yang Ruoyin took a deep look at Han Fei. Where is the guide? Han Fei snorted. Dead. Yang Ruoyin shrugged. Everyone has their own fate. She was destined to meet you. I just didn't expect that you survived. That day, there were 4 peak-level dangling fishers chasing you. Han Fei smiled faintly. Everyone has their own fate. Luckily, I survived. Yang Ruoyin obviously didn't believe it. There were no coincidences in this world. Those who could survive 4 peak-level dangling fishers couldn't have been lucky. Han Fei didn't explain much, but asked directly. After that, I swam all the way here. But why are you here? Yang Ruoyin said, I came to the level 3 fishery. The target of the level 3 fishery is the sea-born prairie. So, it's inevitable that I came here. As for those 2 people, I made enemies on the way here. So, I chased them all the way here. Seeing that Yang Ruoyin stopped here, Han Fei didn't ask further. Like Old Bai and the others, there were too many fortuitous encounters in this world. Everybody had their own fortuitous encounters. It was meaningless to get to the bottom of it. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Isn't the treasure trove you mentioned outside of the sea-born prairie? Yang Ruoyin nodded. It is outside. I didn't have a chance to go there because of those 2 people. But it doesn't matter. Now that I'm here, I'll explore the sea-born prairie first. If I can walk out of here alive, I'll take you there. Han Fei was surprised. Are you saying that you're not sure if you can make it back alive? Yang Ruoyin looked around and said, Nobody dares to say that they can make it back alive from the sea-born prairie. Han Fei took out a fruit and swallowed it in a few bites. His body was nourished by a large amount of spiritual energy, and his emaciated state was much better. Yang Ruoyin said in surprise, If you eat a spiritual fruit like this, the spiritual energy will disperse. Han Fei pretended to be unconcerned. I'm just eating the fruit for fun. I don't care if the spiritual energy will disperse, Yang Ruoyin. Suddenly, Han Fei asked, Why are the spiritual fruits on the dragon boats so cheap? Why don't these people have a few? Yang Ruoyin looked at Han Fei as if he were an idiot. The dragon boats are different from the sea. Apart from special types of spirit fruits, they only had an abundance of spirit energy and could only assist in cultivation. The spiritual energy contained in a spiritual fruit can be replenished by a regular dangling fisher in 1 month at most. Han Fei was lost for words. 1 spiritual fruit for a month is not enough. Chapter 343. Han Fei felt that these people were really stupid. If he were in the Blue Sea town, he could sell the entire fish dragons to buy spiritual fruits. Yang Ruoyun snapped. Can you absorb all the spiritual energy in the spirit fruit? If you can even use half of it, you'll be considered very efficient. On second thought, Han Fei realized that he was right. He had never considered this problem before, because the spirit fruits that entered his mouth never leaked out a single drop of spirit energy. They were all stored away. Yang Ruoyun thought for a moment and said, no one can replenish their spiritual energy with spiritual fruits at the bottom of the sea. Firstly, the spirit fruit contained too much spirit qi, and using it to replenish spirit qi was too extravagant. Therefore, before going out to sea, rather than buying spirit fruits, it was better to buy restorative panaceas. Not only could it replenish spiritual qi quickly, but it was also cheap. Therefore, it was only natural that people who went to sea had fewer spirit fruits. Most people wouldn't take spirit fruits out to sea at all. Before they set sail, they would basically use it all up. Unless it's a spirit fruit found in the sea, only then would they keep it with them. Enlightened, Han Fei asked again, there are so few spiritual fruits. Why are they sold so cheaply on the dragon boats? Yang Ruoyun shook her head. What do you mean? The basic price of the most common spiritual fruit was between 00 and 1,000 mid-quality pearls. A high-quality spirit refilling pill only cost dozens of mid-quality pearls. Usually, people would only buy spiritual fruits when they were breaking through. Usually, who would buy it? Spirit fruits aren't as cheap as you think. Han Fei thought to himself, a bunch of idiots. However, Han Fei didn't ask anymore. 5 spiritual fruits and 40,000 points of spiritual energy added up to more than 400,000 points of spiritual energy, plus the 300,000 points of spiritual energy that he had stored. He had 700,000 points in total. In the past, he wouldn't have thought that he could obtain this in just a few hours. If he had so much spiritual qi at the beginning, the growth of his strength would probably be even more ridiculous than it was now. Seeing that he had enough spiritual energy for the time being, Han Fei was not in a hurry. He looked at Yang Ruoyun. You said you came to San Francisco. The purpose of the level 3 fishery is the seaborne prairie. What about teaming up? Yang Ruoyun was a little hesitant. Although Han Fei saved her, it seemed that the crisis that Han Fei brought to her was no less than that of the seaborne prairie. So many experts wanted to kill him. Should he go with him? However, when she looked into the depths of the forest, she could not help but sigh. All right. However, the place I'm going might be more dangerous than fortuitous opportunities. You may be strong, but a lot of experts have died in the seaborne prairie. Even peak-level dangling fishers may not survive. Han Fei smiled faintly. Then why do you want to go as an intermediate dangling fisher? Yang Ruoyun's expression was solemn. I naturally have my reasons. Han Fei was surprised. More important than life and death? Yang Ruoyun nodded. Yes, more important than life and death. Han Fei couldn't help but admire this woman. He dared to come in because he had the confidence. This girl came in with all her might. Judging from the strength of the battle between Yang Ruoyun and the twins just now, she might be stronger than ordinary intermediate dangling fishers, but she could barely be an advanced dangling fisher at most. There must be a very important reason for the man to come to the seaborne prairie alone. In Han Fei's opinion, there must be treasures in a place where a person risked his life to go. If others wanted to fight, he had to fight as well. Han Fei was not as talented as Xia Shaochan and the others. Only Han Fei himself knew that it was not his talent that made him strong. Therefore, he had to fight for opportunities. Han Fei smiled casually. Then let's go. But try not to die. I still want to go to the next dangerous treasure trove. Yang Ruoyun rolled her eyes. Han Fei was really unpredictable. Were treasure troves so attractive? Fine, they were indeed attractive. Now that they had teamed up, Han Fei immediately cast the divine healing technique on Yang Ruoyun. Half an hour later, when Yang Ruoyun's wounds were mostly healed, the two of them finally set off. Yang Ruoyun asked, "Where did you come from?" Han Fei replied, "The purple bamboo forest. It's a beautiful place, but there are too many bugs." Yang Ruoyun looked at Han Fei in surprise. "You came here through the purple bamboo forest?" Han Fei was confused. "Didn't you?" Yang Ruoyun's lips twitched. "Of course not. The purple bamboo forest covers an area of about 500 kilometers. It's also known as the insect forest. The stickworms and red spirit spiders there are famous. Few people who aren't armorists enter the sea-born prairie from there." Han Fei shrugged. "I'm not an armorist. I'm a spirit gatherer." Yang Ruoyun rolled her eyes. "I don't believe you. That brat was too cunning. If she hadn't known Han Fei for a long time, she might have been fooled too." Yang Ruoyun pointed ahead and said, "The first 1,000 kilometers of the seaborne prairie are actually more dangerous than the middle. However, it also ensures the prosperity of the seaborne prairie. After the first 1,000 kilometers, the last 500 kilometers are relatively safer. That's where seaweed and algae gather. It's a place in the seaborne prairie that's suitable for regular fish to live." Han Fei asked in surprise, "Have you been here before?" Yang Ruoyun shook her head. "No, but I've studied this place for a long time." As they swam deeper, Yang Ruoyun continued to introduce the seaborne prairie to Han Fei. After the communication, Han Fei finally learned that, although this place was named after the reeds on the surface of the sea, it was much less dangerous in the reeds than in the water. In Yang Ruoyun's words, as long as there was enough spiritual energy, a boat could cross the reeds in the sky. If there were any special creatures or unusual events, they would have been discovered and taken care of a long time ago. Therefore, it wasn't very dangerous on the surface of the sea. However, because of the green arrow venomous frogs and something named venomous blood vines, most people wouldn't explore the reeds. Of course, there were also many people who were very interested in using poison, so they would go out of their way to collect some poison. However, there weren't many of them. It wasn't that they didn't want to play with poisons, but that they might be poisoned to death. Few dangling fishers had arts related to poisons, so nobody was interested in them on the surface of the sea. But it was different at the bottom of the sea. According to Yang Ruoyun, she was ambushed 3 times in the seaborne prairie. But she had come in with the twin brothers in hot pursuit. Also, she intentionally avoided them, so she made it in safely. It was said that there would be more ambushes at the second checkpoint of the seaborne prairie, 1,500 kilometers down. Those people would be even stronger. As he expected, Han Fei didn't run into any exotic beasts on his way. After about 200 kilometers, Han Fei found that the scenery around him changed. The seaweed vines were becoming fewer and fewer, replaced by a rocky land. Or rather, it wasn't a mountain rock, but a strange, colorful object. Those objects looked weird. Some were columnar with holes in the middle. Some are strips like coral, and some are chubby and seem to be wriggling. Sponges? Yang Ruoyun nodded. "It seems that we're not lucky enough to enter the sponge area. I'm afraid that hundreds of kinds of sponge are living here. They seem dead, but there may be exotic sponges here." Han Fei was lost for words. "Even the most exotic sponges are just sponges. Can they fly up and hit me?" Yang Ruoyun turned around and looked at Han Fei. "They're even more horrifying than that. In the level 3 fishery, it said that some people have encountered exotic sponges that can swallow them." Whoever is absorbed by them will be turned into stones. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Are they still sponges? Am I not good at biology, or are there miracles in life? Sponges have no head, tail, torso, limbs, nerves, or organs. Their main components are calcium carbonate or silicon carbonate and a lot of collagen. I can carry all of them, okay? Are you telling me that there are sponges that can petrify people? Isn't it a Medusa? Suddenly, Han Fei paused. Wait a moment, Yang Ruoyun. Han Fei hurried to take out his fishing rod and cast the hook. The moment the hook was thrown out, it seemed to have become invisible. In fact, it had turned into a water vein that resembled a stream. Yang Ruoyun was slightly surprised. What a weird fishing technique. However, she looked at the direction Han Fei was looking at and was slightly surprised. Yellow-blooded sea cucumber. Han Fei said this is good stuff. It's rare and even more expensive than a spiritual fruit. I bought one on the dragon boat. Just thinking about it makes me feel like I'm losing out. I should buy a few more. Yang Ruoyun frowned. The yellow-blooded sea cucumber is a great tonic. It doesn't contain much spiritual energy, but it's full of energy. It's mainly used for body refinement. You're also a body refiner? Han Fei didn't answer. Bullsh *T. I would have been dead if I didn't have a tough body. He activated Flash Hook and Thousand Twining at the same time, and the yellow-blooded sea cucumber was tied up before it noticed anything wrong. But when Han Fei retracted the fishing rod, a ball-shaped yellow sponge suddenly came with the fishing hook. Han Fei. Chapter 344. Han Fei thought that Yang Ruoyun was talking nonsense. What sponge could petrify people? How could that be? It didn't make sense. Of course Han Fei knew what a sponge was. It used to be made into dish towels and bath balls in the Mediterranean. You expect this thing to kill people? But now Han Fei's face suddenly changed. This was a new species. Its mobility was comparable to that of a fish. A string of data appeared in his eyes. Name: star-chasing sponge. Introduction: an exotic sponge that has been nourished by spiritual energy for a long time. It has a brain and can chase prey according to the movement of water. Normally, it would roll along with the ocean currents and self-destruct when encountering an enemy. Level 33. Quality: rare. Contains spiritual energy greater than 1096 points. Effect: inedible, collectible, none, unabsorbable. Han Fei waved the hook hard and got out of the range of the star-chasing sponge. At the same time, he said to Yang Ruoyun, telepathically, run. Yang Ruoyun didn't know what was going on, but seeing that Han Fei was running away in panic, she immediately ran too. In the end, before the two of them could run more than 100 meters, there was a loud bang behind them, and a huge wave sent the two of them flying far away. However, before the two of them could swim out, they saw star-chasing sponges flying towards them one after another. Ha was attracted here. Han Fei's blood froze. What did I do? All I did was catch a yellow-blooded sea cucumber. Who did I offend? Yang Ruoyun's expression changed. Oh no! Why are these sponges following us? Han Fei said helplessly. They seem to be able to sense the flow of water. As long as we continue to swim, I'm afraid they will continue to follow us. To be honest, Han Fei had never met such a shameless creature. This thing was like a will-o'-the-wisp. If you ran, it would follow you. You thought that the ghost was chasing you, but in fact, it was your running that caused the wind to move. That's why it's been chasing you. It was the same for the star-chasing sponge. However, it was different from ghost fire. Ghost fire would not explode. However, this thing was like a torpedo. Before anyone could even touch it, it would explode. Bang, 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 bang. After a while, Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun rushed out of the sponge area. However, at this moment, the two of them were in a sorry state. Yang Ruoyun was covered in blood from the explosion. Her hair was a mess. Her face, skin, and clothes were all sprayed with a pale yellow. The disgusting juice of Se. Han Fei was not much better off. However, his physique was much stronger than Yang Ruoyun's. other than his clothes that were blown into tatters. The rest of his body was still intact. Of course, Han Fei's body was also pale yellow, SE liquid. Han Fei wiped it, only to find that it was so sticky that even the seawater couldn't wash it off. Even with the help of spiritual qi oscillation, he only managed to disperse the sticky liquid after 3 to 5 times. Yang Ruoyun's eyes were burning with anger. Han Fei smiled awkwardly and cast a divine, healing technique on her. Don't blame me for that. I'm here to look for treasures. Who knew that there would be such a disgusting thing? Yang Ruoyun, can you not take risks for these small profits? It was just a yellow-blooded sea cucumber. The next time you board a dragon boat, you can buy goods in the trading market. Spirit fruits, yellow-blooded sea cucumbers. You'll have everything you need. You won't be able to finish them even if you eat them every day. Han Fei looked up at the sky. Boarding a dragon boat? Not to mention anything else. I'm afraid I've already become SN. He had expected that there would be people from the Sun family on the dragon boats. It was not a coincidence that there would be people from the Sun family on the dragon boats. If there were no accidents, there might be people from the Sun family on every dragon boat. Han Fei said, "You've seen a lot of things. This time, we encountered this damn sponge. Next time, we won't suffer this loss. This kind of setback can enhance our chances of survival in the infinite ocean." Humph, you're being unreasonable. Passing through the sponge area, the two of them came to an area overgrown with seaweed. There were many sea urchins of different shapes and colors here. Occasionally, eels would drill out of the seaweed. However, when they saw Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun, they drilled into the seaweed again. Han Fei even saw a pure green octopus, which was disguised as seaweed. However, this time Han Fei didn't act rashly. Even if I want to eat octopuses, I'll eat normal octopuses. This thing is colorful. God knows if it's poisonous or not. Half an hour later, the two came to a depth of 1,500 kilometers. Han Fei was shocked. What blocked Han Fei's eyes was a curtain-like seaweed wall. The scene in front of him was as if a wall of seaweed had been erected in front of him. Looking left and right, it seemed that there was no end. Looking up, it seemed that this seaweed extended from the surface of the sea to the bottom of the sea. That scene was spectacular. On those seaweeds, Han Fei saw a lot of barnacles and sea melon seeds. Of course, these were not the only two. There were also some green spiders crawling on the seaweed, and there were also twisted worms moving on the seaweed. There were also colorful sea urchins hanging on the seaweed. As long as you looked carefully, you would find many kinds of strange creatures. From a distance, this wall looked like a green curtain, dotted with colorful stars. Han Fei looked at this scene in a daze. How can this thing get in? Not to mention Han Fei, even Yang Ruoyun was shocked. At this moment, she also widened her eyes and looked at the wonder of the seabed curiously. Yang Ruoyun said via voice transmission, "I thought that the seaweed wall was just a rumor. There should be a way. But I didn't expect that there was really no way." Han Fei almost vomited blood. "So, you didn't make a guide?" Yang Ruoyun shook her head. "I've seen records in books that there is a seaweed wall in the undersea prairie which can resist the attack of fish tides and give birth to all creatures. The height of the wall is as high as the sky. The thickness of the wall can stop flood dragons and divine turtles. I thought it was just exaggerated." Han Fei swallowed. "That's really good writing, Yang Ruoyun. The two of them." Dida stared at the seaweed wall with widened eyes. In the end, Han Fei suggested, "Why don't we try swimming upstream?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. The two swam straight to the surface of the sea and swam nearly a kilometer. When the seaweed vines on the surface of the sea almost reached their faces, Han Fei finally admitted that there was really no gap for them to crawl through. The two of them landed on the bottom of the sea again. Han Fei looked at the seaweed wall and said leisurely, "It can stop flood dragons and divine turtles. With our level, The flood dragons can even slap us to death with their tails. We can't force our way through, Yang Ruoyun agreed. Of course we can't force our way through. We have to go underground. Han Fei agreed. They indeed had to go underground. Although drilling holes was not very elegant, it was better than stupidly drilling into the seaweed wall. If some poisonous vines or strange trees suddenly popped out of the seaweed, they might not be able to cut through them even if they had knives all over their bodies. With a thought, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp appeared in front of Han Fei. Han Fei kicked the nine-tailed mantis shrimps, but dig a hole. Your master wants to go in. With that, Han Fei glanced at Yang Ruoyun and said, There is no entrance above, so we can only go underground. If that's the case, the ambush you mentioned, is it underground? Yang Ruoyun nodded. If there is no accident, it should be. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp grunted and dug a hole. Every time its master called it out, it was either digging a hole or fighting. Didn't it need rest? At the very least, finding a partner for me would be fine. Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun followed behind the nine-tailed mantis shrimp, only to see its 9 tails digging in the soil and its 2 forelimbs scraping out soil from time to time. Yang Ruoyun asked in surprise, Is your contractual spiritual beast really an exotic one? Han Fei nodded. I can't deal with a legendary one. Yang Ruoyun was surprised. Amazing. It's the first time I know that a creature can dig holes so fast. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. That's not possible. Crabs can also dig holes. If you can catch an exotic crab, it can also dig a hole for you in minutes. If crabs can't do it, lobsters can also do it. Yang Ruoyun expressed no interest, but secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, she cooperated with Han Fei. It was very safe along the way. Apart from the random explosions in the sponge area, it could be said that nothing else had happened. They didn't know how far the 9-tailed mantis shrimp had dug. Anyway, it dug up a large area of roots. These roots even wanted to entangle them. Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun were immediately busy. Both of them held knives in both hands and kept cutting the roots Han Fei had been perceiving. When he found that the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was digging slower and slower, he kicked the 9-tailed mantis shrimps, but dig down. Yang Ruoyun was speechless. Is this how you treat your contractual spiritual beast? I really feel sorry for this contractual spiritual beast. It has such a master. After a while, Han Fei looked excited. He found several holes nearby. In the soil, there were really people lurking. Chapter 345. The underground was dark and turbid, and visibility was almost impossible. Everything depended on perception. However, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp must have made some noise when it dug, so Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun's location was completely exposed. Han Fei asked, What should we do if we're ambushed in such a place? Yang Ruoyun simply responded, Kill. Those who dare to come here to ambush us can't be too weak. Don't show any mercy. Yang Ruoyun stood still and asked telepathically, Are we ambushed? Han Fei nodded. Yes, but it seems that there are only 2 of them. In the darkness, Yang Ruoyun's expression changed slightly. Change our route. Han Fei asked why. Yang Ruoyun quickly explained, If it were you, would you dare to ambush 2 people in the depths of the seaborne grassland? Han Fei replied, I do, but with my current strength, I dare. Yang Ruoyun. Han Fei suddenly said, Wait a minute, don't be silly. If the ambushers are as strong as me, they must have a lot of good stuff on them. Yang Ruoyun stopped. What are you trying to say? Yang Ruoyun had a bad feeling. Han Fei was too strong, and he was neither good nor evil. Although he was not a villain, he was not a gentleman either. At this moment, Han Fei was already thinking of robbing others. Sure enough, in the next moment, Han Fei said, Keep going. Yang Ruoyun asked, What about you? Han Fei said, It's okay. I'll catch up with you. Han Fei controlled a circle of blue sea wandering dragon daggers and continued to dig holes in the mud, like a drill. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from Yang Royun's perception. "Asshole, you used me as bait." Yang Royun gnashed her teeth. "Why did I run into such a bastard? Aren't you here for treasure hunting? Why did you suddenly have the idea of robbing them?" Han Fei didn't know what Yang Royun was thinking. Anyway, his perception range was very large, and everything within 300 meters was under his control. He crawled into the underground tunnel dug by someone else and was still hundreds of meters away from the two people. Under Han Fei's feet, a concealment array was quickly formed with spiritual energy. At this moment, Han Fei wished he was a hunter. In this way, he could quietly approach the two people who were lying in ambush. Han Fei raised the blue sea wandering dragon bow and gathered 1,600 points of spiritual energy into an arrow. Not far away, the two advanced dangling fishers were listening carefully to the noises above. Suddenly, one of them said, "Hey, don't you feel that the spiritual qi seems to have suddenly become denser?" Another person frowned. "It seems so. Is there a spirit gatherer in the team above gathering spiritual energy?" Xiao. Just as they were discussing, their faces changed drastically. They turned around almost at the same time, activated their spiritual energy protective covers, and fused with their spiritual beasts. Boom! Above, Yang Ruoyun's expression changed. She gritted her teeth and disappeared. Bastard! Below, Han Fei's sneak attack succeeded. The two advanced dangling fishers finally came back to themselves at the moment of life and death. At this moment, one of them was blasted away. His arms were a bloody mess. There was another guy with a dagger in his hand. One of his show was shot, and one of his hands was trembling. As the saying goes, when two sides meet on a narrow path, the one with the bigger fist is the final word. The underground passage was not wide, and Han Fei covered it with the water-dividing seal, which played a perfect defense almost at the same time as the attack. Electric Soul Strike! Absolute Shadow Stab. With a sizzle, a large number of flashing blue electric arcs burst out of the water, and Han Fei shuddered from the electric shock. But to the two of them's surprise, Han Fei managed to block it. Bam! The two of them were smashed away again. The weight of the water-dividing seal and Han Fei's huge strength blew them away, even though they were advanced dangling fishers. At this moment, all the blue sea wandering dragon daggers came out. But beside the two of them, Yang Ruoyun's dagger had also arrived. But even a seriously injured, advanced, dangling fisher wouldn't be easily defeated. Yang Ruoyun exchanged a dozen blows with one of them in the blink of an eye, and then she was hit 3 times by the two of them. In the blink of an eye, Yang Ruoyun had exchanged more than a dozen blows with one of them. Then she was attacked by the two of them together. She was hit 3 times and was forced to retreat. "These two are mine. Don't fight with them." Yang Ruoyun was so angry that her mouth twisted. "Am I fighting with you? I'm here to help you. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. I'm here to help you, yet you don't know how to appreciate my kindness." However, Yang Ruoyun was also quite shocked. Han Fei's strength was a bit too strong. 2 advanced dangling fishers were seriously injured by him as soon as they met. What kind of strength was this? In fact, Han Fei didn't feel any pressure at all. The million knife art under the control of the saber manipulation art could be said to have reached the peak of the knife array of the dangling fishers. These 2 hunters had almost no room to resist, and their bodies were cut dozens of times. Han Fei secretly smiled. If he hadn't made the breakthrough, it might have taken him some effort, but now, to put it bluntly, he was essentially only 1 step away from an advanced dangling fisher. In terms of comprehensive strength, he was even more powerful than the opponents. If he couldn't win, wouldn't his god-level combat skills and the extremely domineering, indestructible body art be in vain? The law battle skill and the incomparably tyrannical immortal body, wouldn't that be a waste of time? The 9-tailed mantis shrimp rushed in at this time, and the 9-star chain directly tied the two of them up. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp rushed in at this moment and tied up the two of them with a 9-star chain, its forelimbs twitching. If the two of them tried to escape, it was ready to smash their heads. Seeing that the mantis shrimp's hammer-like limbs were about to reach their heads, the two men's faces turned green. With a saber in each hand, Han Fei stood in front of the two and said, "When ambushing others, you must be prepared to be ambushed. Give me your swallowing seashell." The two of them felt helpless. At this point, he had no choice but to hand it over. Otherwise, they could still take it if they killed him. Immediately, 2 swallowing seashells floated in the water. Han Fei took it and frowned. 2 swallowing seashells for 1 spiritual fruit? These two people were terrifyingly poor. Apart from the spiritual fruit, there were several spiritual weapons, dozens of magic weapons, some materials, and mid-quality pearls. Pauper. Everyone. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "I can spare you, but on one condition. Brother, speak. As long as you spare our lives are yours." Han Fei's lips curled. "Let's go to the depths of the sea-born prairie. You two lead the charge." Yang Ruian looked at Han Fei in surprise. To her surprise, Han Fei was not going to kill them. However, she immediately understood. The road ahead was unknown, and she was afraid that there would be many dangers. Was there anything more suitable than 2 advanced, dangling fishers leading the charge? The two of them shuddered when they heard that. One of them said, "Brother, we can't go deeper." Han Fei's face turned cold. "Why not?" One of them said in horror, "There were originally 4 of us, but one of us died in the AI. One of us died in the depths of the sea-born prairie, and another died in the depths. There are terrifying giant worms there." Giant worms? Han Fei and Yang Ruin looked at each other, and the latter shook her head. "It's not in the records. I've never heard of it." Han Fei turned to look at the two of them and sneered. "I'm not negotiating with you. You have to go whether you want to or not. If you go, you may survive. If you don't, I'll kill you right now." The two of them changed their expressions. However, they only agreed after a brief hesitation. Like Han Fei said, they might have a chance of survival if they went, and they would be killed if they didn't. Once they passed the worm nest, they might be able to get rid of Han Fei. The two of them discussed in secret and decided to take the risk. Han Fei received Yang Ruoyun's telepathic message too. "Don't trust them easily, but you must kill them immediately if anything goes wrong. Otherwise, we'll be in great trouble later." Han Fei grinned. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." A moment later, led by the two of them, Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun passed through the underground channel that had been dug. About half an hour later, the two of them suddenly turned around and said, "It's a dead end. Back then, after we escaped, we sealed off the road." Han Fei asked, "Why didn't you go around it?" One of them smiled bitterly. "How could we? There are worm nests everywhere unless we walk on the surface. But if we walk on the surface, the seaweed that is denser than the reeds will tie us up in no time." Han Fei speculated that the giant worms might be creatures similar to the giant sandworms. Since the two of them could escape, theoretically speaking, there was no reason why he couldn't escape. 9-tailed mantis shrimp, dig into the worm nest. Seeing that the 9-tailed mantis shrimp continued to dig, Yang Ruoyun pulled Han Fei. "Are you crazy? Why are you still digging?" Han Fei shook off her hand and said solemnly, "If the many paths in front of you are all dead ends, you have to choose the relatively easy one. Since they escaped, it means that the worm nest is not so dangerous. Maybe that's the real way." Yang Ruoyun was stunned for a moment. It did make sense. However, why did Han Fei venture into the depths of the sea-born prairie? Was it just for treasure hunting? Yang Ruoyun said, "With your strength, there are countless dangerous places and secret realms in the level 3 fishery. There are countless dangerous places and secret realms in the level 3 fishery. Why do we have to go to the sea-born grassland? Han Fei grinned and thought of the people of the Sun family. He couldn't help but say, because this place is suitable for a cemetery. Chapter 346. Han Fei wanted to go deep into the sea-born prairie, not just for opportunities. After all, something like a fortuitous opportunity could only be obtained if you were alive. In fact, treasure hunting was only one of his purposes. He suspected that if he left the sea-born prairie in a hurry, would anyone continue to hunt him? If he encountered 5 peak-level dangling fishers in regular waters, it was hard to say whether or not he could survive. After all, he had been heavily wounded in 2 battles. It was not hard to imagine how difficult it would be. The sea-born prairie, on the other hand, was full of unknown dangers. For Han Fei, every danger was both a danger and a barrier. If more people from the Sun family came after him, this complicated environment would be more suitable for him. In fact, Han Fei's intuition was very accurate, but he didn't know how powerful the big families were. At this moment, in the place where the monstrous octopus fought, a group of 15 people was following a young man. Young Master Mu, they've all disappeared. I'm afraid they've already died. The young man closed his eyes and put his hands behind his back. He raised one of his hands, and a green snake dashed out of his sleeve. Very soon he found a few places. The young man said casually, all 5 of them died here. Their flesh and blood have been swallowed by the ocean, and their bones are buried in the sand. Han Fei has already escaped. Behind the young man, many people were shocked. All 5 peak-level dangling fishers were dead. Someone dug up the place where the green snake crawled. Very soon, broken bones were dug out. The man scolded. Sun Chi, did you run into any unusual creatures? These bones seem to have been bitten by a certain creature. They're incomplete and have teeth marks. Sun Chi was the one who escaped earlier. He shook his head in confusion. No, I didn't run into any when I left. Useless. The young man waved his hand. Don't argue. The sand was loosening, and the green snake pulled out a gigantic snake skull. Everybody held their breath. The snake's skull was so ferocious that its teeth were glittering coldly. The young man smiled casually. An exotic creature. This must be one of its skulls. Interesting. As it happens, I've long heard that the sea-born prairie has built seaweed walls underwater. Now that I'm here, it would be a shame if I didn't take a look. Boom! The channel was broken through. Looking at the huge and long pit, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. At first glance, he saw a huge and fat worm that was more than 30 meters long and 5 to 6 meters wide wriggling in the worm pit. Behind it, feces flowed out from time to time. The lines of SE. A string of data appeared in his eyes. Name: dead leafworm. Introduction: its body is huge, and it is formed by countless dry leafworms. During battle, it would disintegrate and cause a plague of insects. Once possessed by the dry leafworm, it would absorb the life essence of living beings. Because the individual withered leafworms were weak, they were not classified as wondrous. Level 34, quality, rare, contained spiritual energy greater than 1999 points, effect, inedible, collectible, none, unabsorbable. Han Fei wanted to run away, but he held back in the end. It's actually a dry leafworm. Yang Ruiyun said in surprise. You know this kind of giant worm? Han Fei nodded slightly. Of course he did. In fact, what was really famous about the dry leafworm was not these worms themselves, but the spiritual plant hidden in the worm nest, the dry leafworm grass. According to the Encyclopedia of Spiritual Plants, there was a strange grass in the sea that looked like a worm and had a withered color. If you touched it, your skin would rot in 3 breaths, and your life would dry up in 9 breaths. How poisonous it was! Han Fei couldn't help but worry. Although he hadn't seen this dry leafworm grass yet, he was afraid that even dangling fishers wouldn't dare to touch it. Of course, although the dry leafworm grass was extremely poisonous, it was not impossible to restrain it. According to the Encyclopedia of Spiritual Plants, this kind of spiritual grass would turn poison into treasure after absorbing enough vitality. Han Fei was a little tempted. This was the most poisonous and the most precious spiritual grass he had seen so far. However, this dry leaf worm was too disgusting. Seeing this big fat worm made of countless small worms, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. Yang Ruoyun asked, What should we do?" The two of them wanted to retreat. However, they were blocked by the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and couldn't retreat even half a step. Han Fei said, "Don't try to run. Otherwise, I'll knock you to death." One of them said, "Brother, we can't defeat this worm. Whether we dig to the side or go around, we will eventually dig into the worm nest." Han Fei asked in surprise, "Are there many such worm nests?" "Many. So, it's impossible to go deep underground." Han Fei smiled disdainfully. "Then what if we continue to dig down? Are all these worm nests down there?" The two of them shook their heads like a rattle. "No, we can't dig. Above us are big worms. And if we dig down 100 meters, there are countless small worms. That's a real worm pit." Han Fei was a little speechless. This is not easy. If it were clamworms, it would be fine. After all, clamworms couldn't absorb vitality. Besides, clamworms were not made of small worms. Not good. There are worms crawling over. Yang Ruoyun's face changed greatly, and she immediately pulled Han Fei back. Yang Ruoyun said, "Go up and rush out." Han Fei frowned. "It's seaweed outside. Do you dare to enter?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. "I have to try." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly and finally nodded. "Okay, let's go up." The other two were still reluctant to go up. However, Han Fei stabbed them in the back. "Now, don't even think about running away. Otherwise, I'll kill you now." The nine-tailed mantis shrimp was digging quickly, followed by the two hunters and Yang Ruoyun and Han Fei. Cannon fodder naturally had the awareness of being cannon fodder. Because Han Fei and the others were making a lot of noise, countless arm-long dry leaf worms were wriggling against the soil behind them. Han Fei said, "Hurry up, dig." The cave was only about 100 meters from the ground, and it only took a few minutes. The moment the nine-tailed mantis shrimp broke out of the soil, it instantly turned into a ray of light and was taken back by Han Fei. And the two hunters had cursed Han Fei countless times in their hearts at this moment. The moment the two broke out of the soil, they looked at each other and said, "Run separately. Otherwise, you and I will eventually die while exploring the path." Yang Ruoyun quickly said they ran away. Han Fei responded unhurriedly, "I know. If we don't run, how can we explore the way? Just find someone to follow." When Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun came out, they saw two big holes drilled in the seaweed. Han Fei randomly chose one and got in. At the same time, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers circled around him, frantically crushing the seaweed, trying to drill a bigger hole. Puff! Just when Han Fei chased them for less than 100 meters, something appeared in the seaweed. It was a green vine, like a spirit snake, breaking through the seaweed and entangling him. Han Fei seemed to have expected that there would be something, so he was not in a hurry. He raised the blade in his hand and chopped off the vines with a single slash. Gurgle! From the hole behind him, a large number of small dry leaf worms swarmed out. However, to Han Fei's surprise, as soon as these worms swarmed out, a large number of seaweed entangled them. At first, large tracts of seaweed withered and finally turned into pieces. After a stalemate, a large number of dry leaf worms were parasitized by the seaweed. Their bodies were filled with seaweed and finally disintegrated. Han Fei perked up. "I've got an idea." Han Fei was excited, only to find that Yang Ruoyun was struggling to cut the vines and seaweed. Yang Ruoyun said, "There are more and more vines and seaweed. We can't run far." Han Fei looked at the seawater around him, which was almost dyed green. The speed at which the blue sea wandering dragon daggers stirred was also getting slower and slower. At this moment, Han Fei felt a chill on his back, and something seemed to be coming over his head. Water stirring seal technique. As the big seal flew across the sky, a weird vine like a long snake bombarded the water-dividing seal. BM, Han Fei turned his head, only to find that Yang Run was hit and fell heavily to the ground, almost wrapped in seaweed and turned into a grass doll. Han Fei did not immediately turn around and return. Just now, it was Yang Ruoyun who proposed to dig a hole. In fact, there was another way just now, which was to retreat. Yang Ruoyun did not choose to retreat. Anyway, she chose to take the risk, which was unreasonable. Was this woman very reckless? Or did she actually know something? Was that why she wanted to dig it out? Han Fei pretended to be approached by the weird vines and ignored Yang Ruoyun. After 2 minutes, Han Fei, do you still want your treasure trove? Come and save me. In fact, Yang Ruoyun's every move was in his perception. She had been tied up by dozens of vines, and because of the seaweed entanglement, she was unable to move. So she finally asked Han Fei for help. F***CK. Seeing that he couldn't find out anything, Han Fei immediately turned around and swept away the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Puff, 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 the vines were cut up. Han Fei landed in front of Yang Ruoyun, looked up, and looked at the hundreds of green vines surging over his head. Han Fei frowned. There is a big vine above. These are just branches. We have to go back. Chapter 347. Han Fei didn't feel very good. These little vines were too easy to cut. This doesn't make sense. Are the vines in the seaweed wall so weak? Then wouldn't they become decorations? Are they trying to lure the enemy in? Han Fei summoned the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and kicked it twice. Dig a hole and drill through the bottom. Han Fei turned his head to look at Yang Ruoyun. Are you so weak? What can the green vines do to you? Yang Ruoyun said angrily, Green vines? Look at how many spiritual weapons you have and how many do I have? Just put away all your spiritual weapons and try. Han Fei agreed. Forget it. Let's continue to drill into the ground. I don't feel safe. Those 2 guys escaped, so they should have made some noise. But there's no noise at all. Did they really run away? In fact, the seaweed could never be cut down. In the seaweed wall, there were more than billions of seaweeds. This was not something that could be cleaned by manpower. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp dug a big hole in the soil. In just a moment, 3 or 5 holes were drilled out. Han Fei said, Keep drilling. Yang Ruoyun asked, Aren't we going down? Han Fei smiled disdainfully. Those bugs are afraid of grass. I want to see which one is stronger, the bugs or these seaweeds. Just when Han Fei was cutting the vines and waiting for the 9-tailed mantis shrimp to dig a hole, a figure suddenly appeared 100 meters away. It was one of the 2 people who had just run out. However, before he spoke, Han Fei immediately broke out in a cold sweat. That Be** starred only had the upper half of his body left. As for the lower half of his body, it had long disappeared, replaced by a body made of vines. Han Fei exclaimed, F***CK. Yang Ruoyun was horrified. Run. Human, your strength has been recognized by me. I won't embarrass you. Hiss, what's talking? Han Fei was horrified. He grabbed Yang Ruoyun and drilled into the hole. Yang Ruoyun said, Someone is talking. Han Fei said, Bullsh**T. Anyone who calls you a human in the sea is a monster. There are alien creatures in this seaweed wall. Han Fei's heart was pounding. The thing had turned people into ornaments and ran to him. It was obviously not a good demon. Han Fei didn't care how many holes the 9-tailed mantis shrimp had dug. He attached himself to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and plunged the 9-star chain into the ground. At the same time, 5 or 6 balls of spiritual energy were thrown into those holes. Bang, bang, bang. Spiritual energy exploded, and dust flew everywhere. The scene was murky. Feeling the countless vines coming at him, Han Fei gritted his teeth. Boom! The giant worm was furious. It raised its head and roared at Han Fei. As it opened its mouth, a large number of small dry leaf worms gushed out like a wave. Han Fei's face was all dark. The 9-star chain stabbed the nest randomly, and he hurriedly moved away. However, what was even more tragic was that large patches of seaweed and vines had also drilled in through the hole, almost covering half of the nest in a moment. Han Fei's eyes almost popped out. Seriously? Aren't they supposed to reinforce and restrain each other? Why were these seaweeds so fierce? Human, I won't hurt you. I just want to chat with you. F*CKU. We have nothing to talk about. Kill this dry leaf worm first if you have the ability. Well, that's not too difficult. On the other side, Han Fei was ready to dig a hole and leave. In the end, a large number of vines and seaweed surrounded them and directly swept towards the giant dry leaf worm. Han Fei's blood froze. What kind of monster is this fake? Is it really fighting against the dry leaf worm? Almost in the blink of an eye, all the seaweed and vines that stretched in from the outside withered. But the next moment, there were still endless seaweed and vines rushing in. Han Fei said to her via voice transmission, "This thing is definitely not a good thing. Tell me, how can I run?" "Don't hide it, hurry up." Yang Royun's face changed. "I really don't know." Han Fei sneered. "Who are you kidding? If you really don't know, how dare you run into the depths of the sea-born grassland? When you saw this monster, you didn't say a word. Did you really not know its existence? Let me tell you, if this dry leaf worm is no match for this monster, I will immediately leave you and run away. I can still find a safe place, but you don't even think about getting my help." With that, Han Fei let go of Yang Royun and dug a hole with the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. After a while, a large number of dry leaf worms were filled with life energy and turned into a mass of sticky liquid. The huge dry leaf worm had shrunk to nearly half its size in less than half an hour. The strange voice still echoed in Han Fei's ears. "Human, I have no intention of hurting you. Then go away. Don't block the way. Human, I need something. I need you to find it for me." Han Fei chuckled and responded, "Just tell me what it is. If I can find it, I will definitely find it for you. If you can't find it, don't bother me." However, the voice suddenly disappeared. However, many vines and seaweed separated and rushed towards Han Fei and Yang Royun, respectively. Han Fei said angrily, "Yang Royun." Yang Royun glanced at Han Fei indifferently, stretched out her hand, and 2 flash stones flew to Han Fei. Han Fei thought to himself, "Sure enough, this woman has been prepared. 1 flash stone can allow me to escape dozens of kilometers away, but this woman gave me 2 so casually. She must have more on her body." Han Fei was speechless. "What's the use of 2? Give me a few more." Yang Royun took a deep look at Han Fei. "Sorry, I have limited flash stones. Life and death are decreed by fate. Thank you for helping me get here. I've already surpassed my own expectations. I wish you good luck." In front of Han Fei, Yang Royun disappeared in the blink of an eye. F*CKU, Yang Royun. Don't let me find you again, or I will kill you. Han Fei was speechless. In fact, he knew everything, but he was still thinking that everything was under his control. Yang Royun borrowed his strength, and he also borrowed Yang Royun's understanding of this place. It was a win-win situation. However, it turned out that he was the one who was fooled in the end. Han Fei wondered if he was hit in the head by an iron-head fish. However, this time it was really a coincidence, and he asked to follow her. "Is this the legendary God's Pit? The kind that traps himself?" Where is that girl?" Han Fei's face was black. Hey, what's your name? Did the dry leaf worms offend you? Why do you want to kill them?" Han Fei looked at the dry leaf worms that had been wiped out, and his eyelids twitched. Oh, I need to release the power of life occasionally. These worms are very powerful, just enough to satisfy me. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Wait, so you are seaweed? Or vines? I am me. I have no name. I can feel a familiar aura on you, so I asked you for help. Then Han Fei saw 2 vines stretching out. 2 people were hanging on the vines. They were the 2 cannon fodder hunters from before. At this moment, they were all dead, and a large amount of seaweed grew out of their bodies. Han Fei was horrified. What do you mean? They are not dead. Han Fei's eyes widened. Half of their bodies are gone, and you tell me they are not dead? However, in the next moment, Han Fei saw these 2 people open their eyes at the same time. 2 strong life energy radiated from the bodies of these 2 people. Help. Help me. Kill. Me, kill me, Han Fei swallowed. They couldn't speak clearly because they also had seaweed in their mouths. However, Han Fei could feel that they were supported by a strong life force. It was better to die than to live like this. Swish. Swish. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers pierced through their skulls, and Han Fei freed them. Originally, these 2 people were cannon fodder, but didn't mean they had to be tortured even in death. Han Fei gritted his teeth. What the hell do you want? If you want to ask for help, just stand in front of me. As he spoke, Han Fei held a flash stone in his hand, but he was prepared to run away with the flash stone first, and then hide in Forge the Universe. No matter how powerful this guy was, it was impossible for him not to find him. At this moment, the dry leaf worms had basically been wiped out. A worm nest had turned countless seaweed and vines into ashes, but it was still not enough. Han Fei overestimated the dry leaf worms and underestimated the monsters in the seaweed city wall. At this moment, right below the place where the worms gathered, a finger-long worm floated up. Han Fei was slightly surprised. Dry leaf worm grass? The data in his eyes turned real. Name dry leaf worm grass introduction. Grows in the nest of the dry leaf worms. It is extremely poisonous in the first 9 years. Dangling fishers who touch it will die in 9 seconds. Hanging fishers who touch it can't live more than 3 years. After 9 years, it turns poison into medicine and absorbs vitality from the outside world. It ripens in another 9 years and becomes a spiritual fruit. It contains a lot of energy. Level, spiritual level, quality, ultra quality, contained spiritual energy greater than 62 points. Effect, when eaten, one's physique will be greatly improved. Current status, 7th year. Chapter 348. Han Fei only felt that the scene at this moment was very weird. The seaweed monster did not seem to care about vitality. A large number of seaweed and vines wrapped around the dry leaf worm grass. Thousands of vines turned from green to yellow, and a large area of seaweed withered in an instant. The voice sounded again. This thing is quite interesting. It was so small, but it could absorb a huge amount of life force. Unfortunately, after a while, it's full. Han Fei. In Han Fei's eyes, the dry leafworm grass was maturing quickly. In just a moment, it had become a super tonic. Gulp. Han Fei was lost for words. Well, is your vitality infinite? Han Fei didn't panic anymore. He couldn't figure out what this guy meant at all. Why did he mutilate himself in front of her? Could it be that this was the so-called self-mutilation to intimidate others? If that was the case, then the seaweed monster had succeeded. Han Fei was indeed shocked. A vine wrapped the matured big cordyceps grass and delivered it to Han Fei. Then it said, "This thing is useless to me, but it seems to be an extremely rare treasure for human beings." Han Fei thought to himself, of course, this was a super tonic. Don't look down on the small amount of spiritual qi. The amount of pure energy it contained was too much. Moreover, it seemed to contain a large amount of life force. Use this. The effect of cultivating the indestructible body was not as good as the fish fire, but it was still half as good. Do you want it? Han Fei suddenly came back to himself and suppressed his desire. Tell me, what do you want exactly? Let me tell you, there's no such thing as a familiar smell on me. Don't spout nonsense like that. It's impossible for me to believe you. Tell me your motive. However, the figure said very seriously, No, you do have a familiar scent on you. A few years ago, there seemed to be a creature that ran through here. I didn't stop him. Yes, you guys seem to have the same scent. Han Fei wondered. A few years ago? At that time, let alone San. The level 3 fishery? I'm still in the ordinary fishery. The voice seemed a little confused. I don't know. However, I can confirm that both of you have the same smell. I don't care what the smell is. Don't touch me. If you dare to touch me, I'll crush my flash stone and run away immediately. Also, what do you want me to help you with? I will think about it. Han Fei thought, this guy is so strong that there's no need to fool me. Even if it really killed him, what was the point? Existences that could speak like this were all unique characters with great potential. The intelligence of these fellows was not low. There was no reason for them to mess with him. Help me snatch a fruit. Ah. Han Fei was stunned. He blurted out, You're so powerful. Snatching a fruit is not a problem for you, the voice answered. I can't leave this region of seaweed, and the fruit is 1,000 miles away. Han Fei thought of something. Was this guy talking about the center of the seaborne prairie? I haven't even reached the central area yet, but I've already met a strong master like you. Would there be other powerful creatures in the central region? If there is, how can I be his opponent? No, you're special. Just like the creature I saw last time. Although it couldn't beat me, it seemed that I couldn't kill you. You should be able to avoid my pursuit, right? Han Fei was silent for a while. Who the hell is this bastard talking about? San, who the hell do I know in the level 3 fishery? Is it Ren Tianfei? No. Ren Tianfei is an old monster from hundreds of years ago. At his level, come to the level 3 fishery? The level 3 fishery? This seaweed monster shouldn't be able to stop him. But if it's not Ren Tianfei, who is it? That cheap father of his? Could it be old Jiang? Sister Qin? F***CK, could it be Tengu? Then Han Fei shook his head slightly. It can't be Tengu. A few years ago, no matter how fast Tang Ji's strength grew, he couldn't have become a dangling fisher a few years ago. Forget it. Han Fei didn't continue to guess. As this seaweed monster said, he was not afraid of him. Especially now that he had flash stones. Han Fei raised his head and said, Okay, I'll help you pick it. But just one dry leaf-worm grass is not enough. 10. Wow, Han Fei swallowed. This F***king seaweed monster is too F***king awesome. How could he just casually take out 10 of these things? Although Han Fei hadn't taken this dry leaf-worm grass yet, the energy contained in it was definitely not to be underestimated. Just think of the huge life energy just now. However, Han Fei didn't agree immediately. The bigger the energy, the greater the price he might have to pay. Han Fei asked, What does the fruit you are looking for look like? Do you know what it is called? The seaweed monster said leisurely, I don't know. However, that kind of fruit is as red as blood and occasionally turns into red fish. Puff! Han Fei was dumbfounded. Is this F***king fruit intelligent? It can even turn into fish. Are you F***king kidding me? The seaweed monster said lightly, It doesn't hurt to have a try. Whether you can get it or not, this dry leaf-worm grass is yours. With that, the vine put down the dry leaf-worm grass. Han Fei reached out and took it. Of course he would take it. However, Han Fei's eyes flashed. Hey, promise me 2 more conditions. Go ahead. Han Fei said, I need spiritual spring. The more, the better. Since you are so strong, you should have noticed that I can absorb a lot of spiritual energy. The seaweed monster thought for a while and said, I have a lot of spiritual spring, but I won't give it to you. After you get the spiritual fruit, I can give you 1,000,000 points of spiritual spring. Han Fei was speechless. No, I need spiritual spring to fight now. You see, I just wasted tens of thousands to avoid you. However, the seaweed monster said leisurely, the spiritual energy you just consumed did not exceed 10,000 points in total. Han Fei, the seaweed monster continued, I can give you 100,000 points of spiritual energy. Sometimes, too much spiritual energy is not a good thing. Give me the fruit. You will get more than what you pay for it. Han Fei's eyes almost narrowed into a line. This guy is so cunning. It's afraid that if it gives me too much spiritual energy, I will run away. But 100,000 points of spiritual energy? What the hell is that? It's just the amount of a spiritual fruit. It may not even be enough for me to run away. Seeing that the spiritual energy seemed to be useless, Han Fei said again, if my guess is right, in the next few days, there may be many peak-level dangling fishers passing by the seaweed wall. Help me kill them, okay? I can help you stop them, but whether they can kill them depends on their means. Han Fei frowned. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. This seaweed monster's answers are all ambiguous. I can't catch it. However, Han Fei didn't make any more requests. He grabbed the dry leaf-worm grass and stuffed it directly into Forge the Universe. Let's get out of this damn place first. Something that even this seaweed monster wants very much must not be ordinary. Maybe if I get it, I don't need to exchange it with him at all. Han Fei nodded. Okay, I promise to help you find the fruit. Now let me go. The seaweed monster said, You can come up. I won't stop you. Han Fei thought for a moment. It doesn't seem to be a big problem if I go out. After all, I have a flash stone. If this guy makes any strange moves, I can just run away. If it doesn't work, I can always be ready to enter Forge the Universe. When the seaweed receded, Han Fei got out of the cave. After coming out, the seaweed really opened the way and didn't stop Han Fei anymore. The vines also disappeared. Han Fei looked around and said, Hey, who the hell are you? What do you look like? Come out and meet me. We will meet if we are destined to. Humph. Han Fei remained vigilant and walked unhurriedly. He didn't dare to use combat skills to speed up, in case this seaweed monster played any tricks. About 2 hours later, when Han Fei was about to walk out of this seaweed forest, his eyes suddenly lit up. Am I finally going out? However, just when Han Fei was in a daze, he suddenly felt a pain in his foot. Han Fei suddenly used a combat skill to break through the last blockade of seaweed. He looked down and saw that his ankle was buckled with a circle of green seaweed. F***CK, Han Fei was infuriated. Who would have thought that I would fail at the last moment? Han Fei was furious. Asshole, what did you do to me? The seaweed monster's voice was leisurely. This is a soul lock of mine, representing the contract between you and me. Take back the spiritual fruit, and I will help you remove it. Han Fei was furious. I was F***king, tricked again. I really want the 9-tailed mantis, shrimp, to kill him. Spiritual energy, give it to me. Han Fei gritted his teeth. When a mass of spiritual spring flew to Han Fei, he took it and turned to leave. The seaweed monster's voice was leisurely. Don't try to erase the soul lock, or it will self-destruct. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said without looking back, Remember to help me kill those peak-level, dangling fishers.